Hello, and welcome to the Dusty Love Connection, where we explore the dusty, derelict, and downright dysfunctional dating habits of the most unproductive men, aka the Kangs, street name Corner Store Tavian, and his continental cousin, Broke Tune Day. Hey, girl, hey, how's everyone doing? I hope you're all having a great start to your weekend. Tonight's live stream, I mentioned in the previous live stream that I wanted to review a YouTube video, and it's called "The Five Most Daring Escapes from Enslavement." I watch this channel a lot. It's called His History's Forgotten People on YouTube. As I mentioned before, I like period pieces. They do a lot of like old English history, but apparently, I saw a short. And in this short, I don't know if you guys know about Henry Box Brown, but Henry Box Brown was an enslaved individual who shipped himself in a box to freedom, right? And I had already known about Henry Box Brown, but I didn't know like the intricate details of his story. And so I thought that it would be interesting for us to go over it because his story is very, very dusty. I briefly watched it. The video is like 46 minutes long. I think I think it's quite interesting. I like this woman's channel. So I guess we can watch it. Hey Cheyenne, hey Coco. I would say hey Coco to myself. Hey Andrea, hey Tanika, hey Queen, hey Cheyenne. So yeah, I just thought we would go over it because like when we say the dust is vintage, like y'all, it goes way back, way back. But anyway, I'm gonna drop the link because Queen is gonna come up and we're gonna go over it. And anyone else who wants to come up after we watch it is can do so as well. Hold on, let me. How's everyone's weekend going? The weather was really nice here in New York. I had I had to go have a cleaning. I'm off for the next 2 weeks. So I went and had a dental cleaning. Had a deep cleaning. I needed one. And that was about it. I didn't do too much of anything else. Oh, I signed up for Pilates. I went and did an introductory class. Like the introductory class was free. Like you get 2 free sessions. Y'all, I did not know Pilates was this hard. It like I was like, oh wow, this is really a workout. But anyway, I dropped the link. I hope everyone is having a great evening and that you're all safe and sound. Like, okay, I guess I'll just jump right into it. Okay, I'm waiting for Queen. Well, we'll just wait for Queen. So what are you guys getting into? What are your Memorial Day plans? I'm not going to do too much of anything. I'm going to go home next week. I need to see my family. And I need to renew my driver's license. Because I want to go to Puerto Rico. That's all I've got really planned. And then getting back to work and stuff. Oh, she's on her. I'm waiting for a laptop to load. Have you guys done anything interesting this past week? Yeah, Tanika, I like because I haven't actually been like on a vacation in a really long time, and so thank you, Cheyenne. So I went to go to Puerto Rico, and there's like this Airbnb. I found this Airbnb. It's like a tiny house, and I think I mentioned on the channel before. Like my dream goal is to one day leave America and live in a treehouse in Costa Rica. But anyway, so this tiny house is like situated in the Yunque jungle, and it's sort of like a tree house, but not really. But I just want to go out there and like just have like some solitude. Like I need some good alone time. Hey, Cece. Like I just want to go out there and meditate. They've got in at the tiny house. It comes with you have to get dropped off like a Uber, but it comes with like a rental van or whatever, because there's like a waterfall nearby. Um and then the bathtub is like completely outside because you're on like I think it's at like 2 acres of like private land, and like the reviews were really, really good. Oh, you had that's wonderful. Tell Dad I said happy birthday. Happy solar return. What does that make him? Is he what month is this? He's a Gemini, right? Yeah, that's what my friend was saying. She was like, make sure you bring some citronella candles. Like I just want to be like out in nature meditating. Like I know it sounds like mad new agey, but that's just what I want to do. Like I want to go on a solo trip. I'm only going to be there for like 5 days. Just, a quick little brief vacation before I get back to real life. And Puerto Rico really isn't that far from New York. So it's pretty cheap in comparison to like other places in the Caribbean. Is it considered the Caribbean? Or is it the Caribbean or is it the Bahamas? Girl, I don't know. I'm not good with geography. Did I drop the link? Well, I'm gonna just start the video until she comes up. Let's get it started. My mom, like my mom, my mom and my homegirl were like, "You go out there alone in the jungle." Mom was like, "I don't." She was like, "I think you should stay like at a hotel." Blah blah blah. And I was like, I don't want to be like in the city center. Like I want to do this whole like alone, sort of like spiritual cleanse sort of thing. Like this might sound really weird, but I really hope one day when I'm there that it rains so I can like take a bath outside in the rain. I saw this girl do this in like on her on her Instagram, and I was like, oh my god, that's something I want to bathe in the rain. So hopefully it'll rain so I can do that. And then like I want to take some really cute pictures, so because I'm not like I don't take a lot of selfies. I'm not one of those people that's like always snapping selfies of themselves. But anyway, let's get into this. Is it lavender essential oil? Yeah, I am gonna have like a lot of fun. That's funny that you say that because my friend was like, "You try to go out there and live your Jane in the jungle," but I don't know. Like it's something I've always wanted to do. Like my ultimate goal would be able to afford a tree house, a really nice tree house in Costa Rica on a nice little bit of land. I'm not gonna be farming or nothing because that's not my vibe. Like I'm not one of these people like, oh, I want to go and farm and eat off. No, I don't want to do all of that. I want a luxury treehouse in the jungle. Yeah. Okay. Let me present. Let's get into this. so we can get this started. And again, this is from History's Forgotten People. This is a channel on YouTube. Hold on, let me.
Slavery in the USA and the West Indies was a horrific nightmare that millions of African Americans found themselves trapped in. But some found the opportunity to escape and give hope to others, making themselves legends in the process. These are 5 of the most daring escapes from slavery, from jumping on trains to hiding in boxes to dressing as the opposite gender. At number 5 is Frederick Douglass. Born Frederick Bailey in February 1818, he spent much of his childhood separated from his mother, living with his grandparents until the age of 6. He was then moved to another plantation before finally being given to Hugh Auld and his wife Sophia in Baltimore. Sophia apparently made sure he was fed, clothed properly, and had proper sheets and a bed to sleep in. Frederick was noble enough in later life to say of her, she was a kind and tender-hearted woman, treating him as she supposed one human being ought to treat another. Of course, we know that can't have been true, as Frederick was kept by her as a slave. However, when he was around 12 years old, Sophia began to teach him the alphabet. Her husband Hugh was not happy about this. He wasn't alone. Most slave owners in the South wanted to keep slaves illiterate. This was partly so they could not read and write themselves with forged passes to the North, and partly because reading would allow them to understand their situation better through newspapers and other reading. For the first time when he overheard Hugh, Frederick understood that the path to freedom lay in learning to read and write, to educate himself. Even though Sophia now removed all opportunities for reading away from him, including hiding her Bible, Frederick said in his autobiography how he managed to teach himself by observing the writing from people around him and learning from white children in the neighborhood. When he was 16, he was given to Thomas Auld, the brother of Hugh, and he was a brutal man. He whipped Frederick so much that his wounds hardly had time to heal, and he wore these scars for the rest of his life. Frederick finally snapped, however, and he fought back against his beatings. He won a physical confrontation with Thomas, who never beat him again. Frederick later described the fight as transformative, and in his autobiography he introduced the story of the fight by stating, "You have seen how a man was made a slave. You shall see how a slave was made a man." In 1838, he met Anna Murray, a free black woman who lived in Baltimore. By this point, Frederick had started to believe in the possibility of escaping slavery, and Anna helped him with this and supported his efforts. The pair fell in love and planned Frederick's path to freedom. Finally, on September the 3rd that year, Frederick boarded a train bound for the north on the Philadelphia Wilmington.
I just want to pause it here briefly, because I don't know if you guys know, but his wife and his daughter just last year received a headstone. Just last year. Let that sink in. Back to this.
Wilmington and Baltimore Railroad. He made it to the town of Havre de Grace in northeastern Maryland and along the southwestern shore of the Susquehanna River. This put him only 20 kilometers from the border of Pennsylvania, but it was actually safer for him to continue through Delaware. He then started on the second stage of his plan, taking a steamboat to Perryville on the other side of the river. For this, he was dressed in a sailor's uniform that had been given to him by Anna Murray, and also a set of identification papers from a retired free African-American sailor. Once he reached Perryville, the journey continued again by train, this time heading to Wilmington, Delaware. Wilmington at this time was a large port at the head of the river, but it wasn't completed, and this meant that the rail line ended there. For his final leg of the journey, Frederick then took another steamboat along the Delaware River, heading towards Philadelphia and freedom. Reaching the city, He continued on to New York, finding shelter with famed abolitionist David Ruggles. Frederick Douglass had done it. He had escaped slavery. A new world had opened upon me, he later wrote. It was a time of joyous excitement which words can but tamely describe. Despite the many changes Frederick had made on his journey, it had taken him less than 24 hours. He sent word for Anna Murray to join him, and she made her way to New York. Just a few days later, they were married on the 15th of September. They later moved to Lynn, Massachusetts in 1841. The couple had used different surnames since being married, but finally Frederick settled on Douglass after a discussion with Nathan Johnson, an abolitionist who he stayed with. His name would go on to become one of the most famous, synonymous with the abolition of slavery. He also went on to write 3 autobiographies, the third of which helped him raise the funds needed for his legal freedom. He toured Ireland and England before returning home to the US, where he continued the fight for abolition even after his legal freedom was granted, also standing up for women's suffrage. At number 4 is the escape of Henry Box Brown, as he came to be known. He was born around 1815 on a plantation called Hermitage in Louisa County, Virginia. Not much is known about his family, but he spoke fondly of his parents, and it's thought he had at least 4 sisters and 3 brothers. His strongest memory of his mother was of her showing him at a young age how the leaves fell from the trees, and describing this as a metaphor for the children of slaves being stripped away from them, describing it with sadness and holding him close. When he was 15 and their slave owner passed away, he was given to one of the sons of his former master, John Barrett, separated from much of his family except his mother, father, and one sister, Jane. However, they remained behind on the plantation while Henry was hired out to work at a tobacco factory in Richmond, where he continued to work when he met his first wife. All we know is that her name was Nancy, and they married, but the marriage, like many couplings between enslaved people, was not seen as legal. Henry and Nancy also had 3 children, who, due to their mother's status, were also born into slavery. Nancy and their children were sold on 3 occasions within Richmond, but on the 3rd sale to a Samuel Cottrell, Henry was approached by him. He stated that he needed another $50 to purchase Nancy for his own wife, and that if Henry would make up the money, he would ensure she would not be sold again. Samuel then blackmailed Henry further by stating that if he did not rent a house for his family and pay Samuel $50 a year, he would make sure Nancy was sold immediately. Henry had little choice.
Con Edison is committed to providing 100% clean, renewable energy to our customers. From investments.
But in 1848, Nancy was pregnant with their 4th child and was sold again, along with their children. This time, they were taken while Henry was at work, removed from their home, sold to someone from North Carolina, and placed in the town jail until they would leave the following morning. After being unable to visit them in jail, Henry begged his master to buy his wife and children to keep his family together, but he was told to go away and get on with his work. They had been married for 12 years. Henry was forced to watch them march the next morning, chained together with other slaves, towards North Carolina, along with others at the side of the road who had to say goodbye to loved ones in the same manner. He watched his children calling out for him from wagons. Unable to do anything to help them, he managed to spot his wife, holding her hand for 4 miles while they walked together, unable to say anything to her except, "We shall meet again in heaven." He made up his mind to escape the bondage of slavery. He later wrote, "But I was determined that come what may, I should have my freedom or die in the attempt." He gained the aid of 2 men who could help him, James C. Smith, a free black man who was his close friend and had helped Henry to hire the house for his family, and a white shoemaker named Samuel A. Smith. Henry came up with the plan of placing himself inside a large box and being shipped across to the north as though he were supplies for a store. Henry paid $86 to Samuel for his help in getting him to Philadelphia, around $2,800 today. On the day of the escape, Henry burned his hand with sulfuric acid to get sent home from work. He spilled too much and burned his skin down to the bone, but it was plenty to get him sent home, although he instead went straight to Samuel Smith's house. The box Henry was to travel in was just 3 by 2 by 2.67 feet, and he only had a small supply of water and a few biscuits to last the journey. He also only had 3 small air holes, and they were nailed across with 2 strips of leather to hide them. But Henry had decided the method of escape was worth the risk, and he later noted that his hope of freedom was stronger than any fear he had. His trip began on the 29th of March, 1849. Samuel sent ahead a telegram to ensure someone met Henry, and the box was transported by wagon, railroad, steamboat, wagon again, railroad again, ferry, railroad for a third time, and finally delivery wagon. It wasn't a smooth journey, and Henry found himself bumped and tossed about, even at one point being placed upside down. He stated that he nearly passed out, but luck had it that 2 men standing nearby wanted to sit down somewhere, and they turned his box back to its side in order to do so, relieving Henry of his uncomfortable position. The entire journey took 27 hours. Henry's box was received by members of the Philadelphia Vigilant Committee on March the 30th, 1849, and they immediately helped him out. He later wrote that he broke into a hymn upon learning he was in Philadelphia and was free. His escape was not only celebrated for its inventiveness, but was also held up as a great example for the efficiency and speed of the government postal system. Henry went on to become a well-known speaker against slavery, meeting Frederick Douglass and writing 2 autobiographies. However, there is an odd part to Henry's story. The same year of his escape, the man who had bought his wife and children sent word and offered to sell them to Henry. This would have secured their freedom, but Henry refused. This was an embarrassment for the abolitionist community, and they did their best to keep it a secret. As a result, there isn't much information on why he refused. After how he had begged and tried to return his family to him in Richmond, and how much he states in the autobiography that he loved his family, it seems odd that he refused the offer. Unfortunately, we can only guess at the reasons why. After the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 passed, Henry fled to England as he was a publicly known figure. It was there he turned his story and character into a trade, becoming a magician and performing in plays written about his life. In 1855 he remarried, this time to a white tin miner's daughter from Cornwall, Jane Floyd. They started a family, and after slavery was abolished in the US, he returned there in 1875 with them, starting a group magic act. They later moved to Ontario, Canada, where he continued to perform until his death on the 15th of June, 1897. Daring escape number 3 is of Harriet Jacobs. Born in 1813 in Edenton, North Carolina, Harriet was born to Delilah, who also had a son, John. The father of Delilah's children was a man named Elijah Knox, who was also an enslaved person, but was favored due to his skills as a carpenter. Sadly, he died in 1826 when Harriet was just 13. Harriet and John didn't have either their father's name or the name Horniblow, which was actually the surname of the slave-holding family who owned them and ran a tavern. Her mother used their baptisms as an opportunity to give them the name Jacobs, free of any ties and belonging just to them. When Harriet was just 6 years old, her mother died. Instead of being allowed to live with her father, as he lived on a different plantation, Harriet lived with her owner, Margaret Horniblow. She taught the young girl to sew, read, and write, skills that were extremely rare in the slave states of the South. Teaching enslaved people to read and write was seen as a dangerous thing to do, as it would enable them to educate themselves and use these skills to escape slavery. But in 1825, when Harriet was now 12 years old, Margaret Horniblow died. She was given to the 3-year-old niece of her deceased mistress, but because she was only a child, her de facto master was actually the father of the niece, Dr. James Norcom. Her brother John, her grandmother Molly, and her uncle Mark were all inherited by the tavern keeper's widow when he died. Friends managed to free Molly and her son Mark, who had to remain as his mother's slave due to legal restrictions on freeing someone enslaved. Her brother John was bought by Dr. Norcom, and so the two siblings were at least able to live together. However, Dr. Norcom was far from a benevolent man, and it wasn't long before he began sexually harassing the young teenager. In her autobiography, she stated that he started by whispering foul words in her ear before his intentions became more explicit. Feeling unable to explain her predicament to her grandmother, Harriet attempted to find a way out from her situation by starting a relationship with an unmarried white lawyer, Samuel Sawyer. She hoped that if she had a relationship with Samuel and they had children together, Dr. Norcom would leave her alone. And she did indeed have 2 children with Samuel, Joseph, born in 1829, and Louisa Matilda, born in 1832. But unfortunately, this did not work as she hoped. When Maria Norcom found out about the first pregnancy, she sent Harriet away to live with her grandmother Molly rather than live in her house. While this might have helped, Dr. Norcom was still able to visit and harass Harriet, as the houses were very close to one another. In April 1835, Dr. Norcom made his move. After removing Harriet from her grandmother's home, she was sent to the plantation of his son. He threatened to sell her children, separately and without her, unless she succumbed to his demands. In June of that year, Harriet made her plan for escape. For a month, she was hidden by a white woman who was a slaveholder herself, secreting Harriet away in her own home. But Harriet needed somewhere better to hide, deciding it was too dangerous to try and make the journey to freedom in the north at that time. At last, she found refuge in a decidedly difficult place to hide, a crawl space under her grandmother's roof. The space was just 9 by 7 feet across, and only 3 feet at its highest point. It must have been horrific, with rats and mice sharing the small dark space with her. She managed to bore holes into the wall, creating tiny inch-wide squares that allowed some fresh air and light in, but not much. Norcom was furious and sold her brother John and her 2 children to a slave trader with the stipulation they should be sold in different states. However, Samuel Sawyer secretly had a deal with the trader and bought all 3 of them to keep them safe. Harriet, however, was furious that Samuel did not, as he had promised, manumit their children. However, he did send them to live with Molly, and Harriet was able to sometimes observe them through the small hole she had made, without them knowing their mother was so close. Samuel also obtained her permission to send their daughter to New York, where slavery had been abolished, and she began work there as a maid for his cousin. In 1842, after spending an incredible 7 years in the cramped space of her grandmother's roof, Harriet finally escaped to Philadelphia by boat, aided by anti-slavery activists of the Philadelphia Vigilant Committee. But Harriet didn't stay there long, moving on to New York to find her daughter. Harriet even found work as a nursemaid for Mary Stace Willis, wife of the poet and popular author Nathaniel Parker Willis. She was constantly kept on the move within New York, as Norcom came looking for her to take her back, which he was legally allowed to do. After finding her brother John, who had freed himself by leaving Sawyer while in New York, she wrote to her grandmother, asking her to send her son Joseph to live with his uncle in Boston. Not long after, Harriet went to Boston as well, finding her daughter Louisa Matilda in the house of Sawyer's cousin, where she had been badly treated. However, Harriet now had both of her children. In 1852, Dr. Norcom was finally dead, but his daughter Mary came looking for Harriet. Harriet was at that point a nanny again for the Willis household, this time in the employ of his second wife, Cornelia Willis. At least twice Cornelia sent Harriet, with her own baby, back to Massachusetts, which was comparatively safe. A few days later, after sending her for a second time, Cornelia sent her a letter informing Harriet that she had purchased her freedom for $300. Harriet was now legally free. She later expressed a bittersweet reaction to the news, horror that someone had been sold as a slave in the free city of New York, and love and gratitude to Cornelia for her actions. Harriet and her brother relocated eventually to Rochester, New York, working in an anti-slavery reading room and bookstore above the offices of Frederick Douglass's paper, the North Star. Here, she would meet renowned abolitionists, including the feminist Amy Post, who became a close friend. Post encouraged Harriet to write her story, and after some setbacks, she finally put pen to paper in 1853. She started with a series of anonymous letters sent to the New York Tribune, eventually writing her autobiography and completing it by 1857, naming it Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. It dealt with a sensitive subject, the sexual abuse and torment enslaved women went through, and their struggle to provide a normal life for their children and as mothers. Despite her desire to tell her story, Harriet was unable to bring herself to use actual names, and so she used the name Linda Brent, changing also the names of Norcom and Sawyer. After having her manuscript rejected twice, Harriet finally found a publisher, Fire and Eldridge. They agreed to publish the book only on the requirement that Lydia Maria Child, a famous author and outspoken abolitionist, write a preface. Harriet was nervous on account of being rebuffed by others previously, but Child was more than happy to not only write the preface, but become the book's editor. Unlike her fears the book would be met with reproach, it was well received, and Linda Brent was praised for her courage and moral rectitude. During and after the Civil War, Harriet and her daughter threw themselves into looking after those fleeing slavery and refugees who came out of the South. In 1863, they founded a free school for African Americans in Alexandria, Virginia. She briefly returned to Edenton in 1867, where she promoted the welfare of those who were now no longer enslaved, but she had to return with Louisa Matilda to Cambridge, Massachusetts, when racially motivated violence drove them back to the north. She opened a boarding house in Cambridge with her daughter and lived quietly until her death in Washington, D.C. on the 7th of March, 1897. The next daring escape on our list at number 2 is that of Robert Smalls. He was born in Beaufort, South Carolina in 1839 behind the house of his mother's owner. His mother was Lydia Polite, who was enslaved by a man named Henry McKee. While his mother had grown up in the plantation fields, she was at that time a maid who lived within McKee's household, and although Robert had the influence of his mother's goula culture, He also grew up in the city. Although there is no proof of who his father may have been, the McKee family favored him, and his mother worried that he wouldn't understand the horrors of the institution of slavery. She asked that he would be sent to work in the fields and see the horrific treatment of slaves being whipped. This worked too well, leading to Robert becoming defiant against the plantation owners and frequently ending up in Beaufort's jail. His mother now requested, fearing for her son's safety, that he be hired out instead to work in Charleston.
Why is it not
At the
showing?
age of just 12, Robert was sent to Charleston and he found work as a laborer, earning $16 a week, but being permitted to only keep $1 for himself, as the rest was sent to McKee. After doing a number of jobs such as lamplighter and working in a hotel, Robert found his calling on Charleston's docks. He learned his trade, employed as a longshoreman, rigger, and sailmaker, eventually working his way up to become a wheelman. He was at this point at the level of a helmsman, but as a slave, he was not permitted to hold that job title. But one of the most important aspects of his work was that he became very knowledgeable about the ins and outs of Charleston Harbor. When he was 17, Robert met and fell in love with Hannah, an enslaved woman working at a hotel in Charleston. She already had 2 children from a previous marriage, but that didn't stop him asking for permission to marry her. They married on the 24th of December, 1856. 2 years later, in 1858, their first child, Elizabeth Lydia Smalls, was born. Later in 1861, they had a son, Robert Jr. Well aware of the likelihood his family could be broken apart at any point, Robert asked if he could buy the freedom of his wife and children. The Kingman family who owned her agreed, but at a high price. They asked for $800. Robert only had $100, and it would have taken him decades to save enough money, the equivalent now of over $28,000. But in 1861, a chance came for freedom as the Civil War began. In autumn of the same year, Robert was assigned to steer the CSS Planter, a lightly armed Confederate military transport. His main duties were to lay mines and deliver messages, troops, and supplies. Building on his already impressive knowledge of Charleston Harbor, Robert grew to know intricately the rivers and byways of the South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida coasts. His journeys would also mean he could easily see the Federal blockade ships just 7 miles away. Robert's skill and seeming willingness to perform his duties meant that his commander, as well as the rest of the crew, trusted him. On the 12th of May, his chance came. The Planter was docked in its usual place on the wharf, and the 3 white officers disembarked to spend the night on land as normal, leaving the black crew on the boat. Before they left, Robert asked Captain Rellier if their families could visit, something which was sometimes allowed. He and the rest of the crew were granted permission for this, with the proviso they left before curfew. Little did he know, they wouldn't be coming back. When the families came, the men revealed the plan to them, although Robert's wife Hannah already had some knowledge of her husband's escape plan. Although some of the wives were initially too scared to go through with it, the lure of freedom was more than enough, and eventually the Planter set off. Robert donned the straw hat of Captain Rellier, and briefly stopping to pick up his wife and children at another wharf, the skeleton crew aboard made their way in the direction of Fort Sumter. Not only was Robert wearing the captain's hat, but he had also studied his mannerisms and made sure to stand like him in the shadows as they passed along their way. Robert guided the ship past 5 Confederate forts, blowing the ship's whistle at each and giving the correct signals at each one. One of the later court-martialed white members of the crew would note it was a guard boat and therefore was intended to pass without interruption, something Robert no doubt knew. As the vessel drew closer to Fort Sumter, however, everyone on board grew nervous. It was well known as the most heavily armed fort with the most suspicious soldiers. Robert guided the boat, against the pleas of the anxious crew, close to the fort as normal, moving slowly past. When the challenge signal was flashed, Robert again gave the correct signals, still pretending to be the captain. There was a long pause, and the crew readied themselves for the volley of gunfire. But it never happened, and they were instead waved on through. As soon as they got beyond the guns of Fort Sumter, the crew immediately dragged down their South Carolina and Confederate flags, replacing them with a white bedsheet. Just as weapons were being loaded on the USS Onward, one of the Onward's crew spotted the white flag of surrender just in time. The crew on the planter began singing and dancing as they realized they were free, and their vessel was brought up alongside the Onward. Robert stepped forward, removed his hat, and apparently said, "Good morning, sir. I've brought you some of the old United States guns, sir." The escape plan had succeeded. Not only had Robert Smalls freed himself and his family, but also his entire crew and their families, and he had captured a vessel for the Union side. At just 23 years old, Robert was quickly held up as a hero, and the US Congress passed a bill to award the crew of the planter the prize money for the ship. His portion alone came to $1,500, enough to buy the home of his former owner once the war was over, although many argued the valuation was not high enough. He served the rest of the war in the Union Navy, and his actions helped persuade President Abraham Lincoln and Secretary of War Edwin Stanton that black troops should be permitted to fight for the Union, something they had previously hesitated on. Where Robert's duties had been to lay mines along the river and byways, now it was his job to remove them. He was involved in many battles during the war, but one of his bravest moments came when he was piloting the planter under Captain James Nickerson. When they were at Secessionville, they were attacked by Confederate guns, and the captain fled for the safety of the coal bunker. However, Robert refused to move from the pilot house, fearing that surrender would mean death for his fellow African-American crew, rather than them being treated as prisoners of war. He instead piloted the boat to safety, and for this, he was promoted to the rank of captain. Despite these achievements, he would have to fight in later years to receive the Navy pension due to him, as he had not been officially commissioned. An act of Congress would finally pass to allow him $30 a month, the correct amount for a Navy captain. He was also later paid in 1900 another $3,500 by Congress for the capture of the planter, as many felt the original amount had been too low. Robert Smalls had been unable to read or write at the start of the war, but while he lived in Philadelphia, he soon became literate. At the end of the war, he returned to Beaufort, buying the McKee's house and moving his mother in with him. But he didn't stop there. He also set up a new school for African American children and went into business with Richard Gleaves, setting up a new store. He invested heavily in the Charleston area, creating a small railroad that took passengers from the wharfs to depots, and owning and publishing a newspaper, the Beaufort Southern Standard.
I'm working towards becoming a certified teacher. And as someone who works full-time, who's also a mom, study.com made this a lot easier.
Robert was a staunch supporter of the Republican Party, and in 1868, he was elected to the South Carolina House of Representatives. He introduced the Homestead Act and the Civil Rights Bill, working hard to ensure the Civil Rights Bill passed. He continued on to the Senate, and he was elected vice president of the South Carolina Republican Party in 1872. Finally, in 1874, Robert was elected to the United States House of Representatives, serving 2 terms from 1875 to 1879. He and his wife and their 5 children, including his 2 stepdaughters.
I just want to pause it here because I don't know if you guys remember in the other live stream that we did, he was one of the original 5 that voted against black men being able to get into Congress. So there's that on that.
Lived in Beaufort together until his wife Hannah died in 1883. He then married Annie E. Wigg, a schoolteacher in Charleston, and they had 1 son together, William Robert Smalls, who was born in 1892. Sadly, Annie then died in 1895. Years later, on the 23rd of February 1915, Robert also died. A monument dedicated to him in the churchyard in Beaufort, where he is buried, used part of a statement he made in 1895. My race needs no special defense, for the past history of them in this country proves them to be the equal of any people anywhere. All they need is an equal chance in the battle of life. Finally, at number 1, we reach the most daring escape of all, that of Ellen and William Craft. Ellen was born in 1820.
Y'all see who Ellen is, right? The number 1 escape.
Georgia. Her mother Maria was an enslaved woman who was mixed race. Her father was the plantation owner and enslaver, Major James Smith, who was white. As a result, Ellen was very fair-skinned, and she was often mistaken for being a full sibling of her half-siblings. Wanting to get rid of the proof of her husband's infidelity, Smith's wife sent Ellen away as a wedding present to one of her daughters, Ellen's half-sister, Eliza Cromwell Smith. Ellen was just 11 years old and now had to work as a house slave in Eliza's household in the city of Macon. But this did give her the opportunity to find out information about the area that would have otherwise been difficult. William Craft was born in Macon in 1824. Not much is known about his early life, but he lived with his mother, father, and at least 1 brother and 1 sister. When he was 16, in order to pay off gambling debts of the man who owned his family, William and his parents and siblings were sold off separately. William especially remembered minutes before being sold himself, his frightened, tearful 14-year-old sister being sold. His family was scattered throughout the South. William's new owner apprenticed him out as a carpenter, and he became a skilled cabinet maker. Although William was permitted to work for fees, most of his wages were taken away from him. Ellen and William met at some point in the next few years, and when they were 20 and 22 respectively, they obtained permission to marry in 1846. However, their biggest fear was of having children while still held in slavery. Both of them had witnessed the enforced separation of their families, and it filled them with horror that they might lose their children in this way. They made their minds up to escape together. The couple came up with many plans they dismissed as too difficult, but finally William, who knew that slaveholders were able to take their slaves into any state, including into the North, came up with a daring idea. As Ellen was fair-skinned, she would pretend to be a white male planter, traveling with her male servant. She had to pretend to be male, as it was not customary for white women to travel alone with a male slave. They settled on attempting their escape at Christmas time. Both managed to obtain a pass to visit friends for a few days, which would buy them some time before the alarm was raised at their disappearance. William cut Ellen's hair short, and she practiced the mannerisms and walk of a man. Ellen also made sure to bandage her head and place her writing arm in a sling, using this as an excuse to hide the fact she could not read or write. Part of her disguise was in pretending to be a wealthy white planter going to seek advice from doctors in the North for her supposed condition. She furthered the disguise with a top hat and a pair of spectacles to alter her appearance as much as possible. Their journey began at Macon Station, where Ellen purchased tickets to the city of Savannah. William and Ellen had to sit separately, as black people were not allowed to be in the same carriages as white people. Just before their train left, the owner of the cabinet workshop where William was employed came onto the platform, clearly looking for someone as he questioned the ticket seller. Shrinking back from the window, William tried to make himself as invisible as possible. Luckily, just before the cabinet maker got to William's coach, the bell rang out and the train pulled away. Meanwhile, Ellen, who had been looking out of the window to avoid the gaze of those boarding the train, was horrified to discover one of the passengers sharing her compartment was an old friend of her master's who had known her for years. To her relief, he simply greeted her with, "It is a very fine morning, sir," none the wiser to who the young man really was. To avoid speaking to him in case he recognized her voice, Ellen pretended to be deaf for the rest of the journey. Once in Savannah, the couple boarded a steamship bound for Charleston in South Carolina. Unbelievably, Ellen herself had breakfast with the captain of the ship the following morning, where he warned the young man before him to watch out for cutthroat abolitionists who might try to steal William away. A slave trader also on the ship offered to buy William, and Ellen was reprimanded at one point for saying thank you to William. In an amusing twist to the situation they had come from, once the pair reached Charleston, they stayed in the finest rooms at the best hotel there. The staff treated the young invalid planter with great care, never suspecting a thing. The last leg of their journey was the most nerve-wracking. In the morning, Ellen attempted to buy tickets for them both for a steamship to take them to Philadelphia and freedom. So far, Ellen had avoided needing to sign hotel registers and for tickets by feigning her arm injury, but they had no such luck this time. The ticket seller, wary of white abolitionists attempting to take slaves out of the South, demanded a signature to prove William was the slave of the young man Ellen was pretending to be. But just as it looked as though they would be stuck, fortune shined on them again. The friendly captain of the steamship they had travelled on to Charleston came by and vouched for them both, happily offering up his signature. However, they still weren't safe yet. The last stop before Philadelphia, Baltimore, had a highly vigilant border patrol. Ellen and William were asked to leave the ship and were detained until they could prove William was Ellen's slave. The couple were sure that this was where their journey ended, that they were about to be caught. The officer who had removed them stood his ground until the ship sounded that it was about to leave. The officer looked over Ellen's bandages and relented, stating that it was a pity to keep them there when the young man was obviously sick. He let them go on their way. The couple arrived at Philadelphia the next day, which just happened to be Christmas Day. In the account of their escape, they stated how once they reached the safety of the city, Ellen burst into tears and proclaimed, "Thank God, William, we're safe." Although the journey had involved luxurious hotel rooms and travel, it had been an emotionally draining and stressful journey, especially for Ellen. While William had been able to continue a role he was used to, Ellen had to pretend to be a different gender, a different class, and white. She had kept up her pretense for the sake of their freedom for several days, never once being discovered or suspected for who they really were. After settling into their new home in the North, they were encouraged by abolitionist circles to recount the details of their escape. The couple agreed to give public addresses to speak out against slavery, although often only William spoke while Ellen stood on stage beside him, as women speaking publicly was disapproved of. However, this also increased their public profile, and when the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 was passed, the pair had to hide, with the help of friends, from bounty hunters sent to find them in Boston. It was too dangerous to stay in the US, and they travelled to England. They travelled from Portland, Maine, on land to Halifax in Nova Scotia, before making their way to Liverpool in England aboard the ship Cambria. Once they reached England, they were aided by prominent British abolitionists who arranged for their lodgings and intensive schooling, and they finally felt they were truly free from their fears of being re-enslaved. While in England, they started the family they had always longed for, their children, free from becoming slaves. They had 5 children altogether, born between 1852 and 1871, 4 sons and a daughter. The Crafts spent most of the 19 years they lived in England in Hammersmith, London. Ellen even managed to find out her mother's whereabouts at the end of the Civil War and arranged for her to come to England. The couple tried to earn a living by making public lectures speaking out against slavery, but they struggled financially. After the Civil War ended, and amendments were made to the Constitution to ensure freedom and rights to all freed people, the couple decided to return to America in 1868 with 3 of their children. Raising funds, they bought land in Georgia and built a school, the Woodville Cooperative Farm School. It helped educate and employ African Americans who were now free, but it sadly closed around 1878. The couple attempted to keep their farm going, but in the face of dropping cotton prices and racial violence, it was understandably too difficult. In 1890, they moved to Charleston to live with their daughter, also named Ellen. They lived peacefully until their deaths, Ellen dying in 1891 and William dying in 1900. All of the people on this list had many things in common.
Okay,
They were
let's stop sharing. All right, so you guys saw that, and I really wanted to speak to, well, we all know about Frederick Douglass and like him marrying a white woman, and I mentioned that I had read recently that his first wife and his first daughter, just last year, I guess like some organization paid for them to have headstones, which is like really odd knowing that him and his first wife, like they both already had headstones. But anyway, back to the Henry Box Brown, which is like a very, very disturbing and disgusting story. Like this man, hold on, because I looked it up. Let's see. Right. So he was when he shipped himself off from slavery, he was married, right? And what History's Forgotten People, one thing she also mentioned was that the slaver told him, like, tried to sell his family, and he didn't buy them. Like he went on to Europe and remarried. And the thing is he escaped slavery. I believe it was 18. Hold on, let me look it up exactly because I don't want to get the year wrong. Shoot, when did he? I think it was 1849. Hold on. Yeah, like he shipped himself. And the crazy thing is in when he shipped himself, he paid someone $86 out of he apparently had $166 in savings. So like he had the money to buy his wife and children, because he had 3 children at the time by his first wife, Anna. And he decided not to. He decided that supposedly freeing them from slavery wasn't his duty, while also pretending to be an abolitionist. Because I looked that up, and it was also, he was going around giving lectures about escaping freedom and the disgusting and vile nature that is slavery, while he had the funds to free his wife and children. Right. And also, another interesting tidbit that I found out was that him and Frederick Douglass apparently had like a lot of bad blood between each other, because I think this goes to show that Black men have this innate need to flex and to flaunt and things of this nature, because Frederick Douglass had a discussion with Henry Box Brown that he said he shouldn't go on these lectures showing people his panorama, which was like the box, right? Because Frederick Douglass said, oh, that other slaves could use this as a means of escape. But now he's basically blown the entire spot up. And so other slaves who tried it now, because a man named Sam Smith tried it like a year later and was caught, because Henry Box Brown was touring the free states, showing people how he escaped from slavery. And then, like they said, with the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, he left America. And literally within 4.5 years of being in England, he had already remarried. And then he actually, like they stated in the thing, he brought his white family to America and never looked for his other wife and child. And I tried to find any information on them, and I wasn't able. Like they don't even the research I did, I couldn't even find like those children's names. Like I know the names of his white children, but not the names of his first family, just the wife. Pretty much. And then the whole thing, like pretending to be righteous and pretending to be upstanding men. We see that today. The whole walking hand in hand for 4 miles. Like you walked 4 miles while this woman and your children were to be sold off. And then when given the opportunity to get them out of said situation, you do nothing. You go to America and immediately marry a white woman. And what's funny is the juxtaposition of Frederick Douglass trying to scold this man when he in turn does the very same thing. And these two men were alive at the same time. Like it's horrible. It really, really is. And to think that you would escape slavery and then go immediately procreate with a white woman, bring her and those children over, and then never look for your like, because when he came back, slavery was over. Like slavery was done with. He could have looked for his family to make sure that they were all right. But the thing is what I find quite telling is the fact that he told his wife in the very beginning, we'll meet again in heaven. Not that he would come look for her, not that he would seek her out, or he was going to get his freedom and then try to get freedom for his wife and children. I mean, historically, I don't really think there's been a time where Black men have been as devoted to Black women and children as Black women have been devoted to Black men. And I was having a conversation with my sister this like a few days ago. And I can't remember exactly what we were talking, how we got on the subject or what we were talking about. But my sister was like, oh, you know, there's still some good Black men, yada, 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 whatever. And I was like, how is it as women, with women who have like, as I'm specifically speaking only to Black women, with Black women who have such a tumultuous history with our male counterparts, right? These men, when you think about it, are our original oppressors. How then can you expect your original oppressors to then turn around and be your savior? Like that's the very exact same thing that Black men are trying to do with white men, and it's not working. Like it's never worked. And it's not going to work for Black women either. Right? You can't expect your oppressor, who's always treated you like scum, when you really think about it, because we are in the situations that we are in because of them. And Black women on the continent aren't in any better situations. They're oftentimes in more dire situations. I mean, female mutilization, child marriage, SA, all of these things are rampant. And yet Black women still give these men the benefit of the doubt. Like, I just don't understand it. Like, I don't know what more we need as women to see, to realize that these men are who they are and they are not going to change. Like, they are their grandfather, their great-great-grandfather's grandsons. Like, these are, like, there's no time in history where Black men have proven to be devoted to change, devoted to the betterment of the Black community. Now, I'm not going to say there haven't been Black men and like trickled in there here and there that have wanted better, but it has amounted to nothing. Like, look at the Black community globally. Like, we're going to implode sooner or later. And I hate to be like one of these like pessimistic people and saying, you know, oh, the Black community is crumbling, but it is. It really is. Like, the things that we as individuals think are okay as a whole are so extremely maladaptive. And I think I just don't know. I don't know if we can, like, I think we're beyond fixing it at this point. Oh, you want to know? Oh, yeah. The man, the Sam Smith that was in that made one of the top 5 daring escapes. He was one of the first Black congressional members, right? But he, I mentioned in a live stream, it may still be up. I don't know where that, what the name of that live stream was, but I had spoken on, and he was one of what they considered, I think it was the first 5. And he was one of the first 5 Black congressional members. And what happened is when these Black men were voted in during a congressional meeting or a caucus, I'm not quite sure what it's called, they voted against allowing other Black men into Congress. So they were going to serve their term, and then that was going to be it because they voted to not allow more Black men in. And so once their term ended, they were kicked out because basically they voted with, I believe it was the Democrats at the time. I could be getting this all wrong, but I believe they voted against the Republicans and sided with the Democrats. And basically the white Democrats okey-doked them. And then that next election term, no Black men could get back in. And then white Republicans had to basically go back to Congress and had to make it into law that Black men could now be allowed back into Congress. And he had stated later on that was one of his greatest mistakes. But I was like, why would you work so hard to be allowed in a space and then vote for other Black men not to be allowed that same opportunity? It's just weird. Yeah, so he's one of the 5, which I find that was like really, really interesting. And I actually, there's a quote. Yeah, here, because it like, okay, it says in 1875, he returned to the United States with his wife and daughter, Annie. Brown performed as a magician during that time. Brown died in Toronto on June 15th, and he stands as a powerful symbol of the Underground Railroad and enslaved African Americans' fight for freedom. That is fucking absurd. Excuse my language. That's absurd. This man did not, he was not a powerful symbol of the Underground Railroad. Literally what he did is he maneuvered away out of slavery, and then instead of like using that as a means to get other slaves out, he went on tour to make money, thereby allowing the U.S. Postal Service, because in that same year, I think relatively around that time with the Fugitive Slave Act, like right before the Fugitive Slave Act of, I think it's 1850, went into, was enacted, the United States Postal Service, I don't know if it was actually called the United States, it was called something different back then, but around that time, they started physically inspecting the mail because they were worried that other slaves would be now sending themselves in boxes to free states. So it was just like, how are you an abolitionist and this supposed powerful symbol of freedom when you basically stopped all other people from using the avenue through which you secured your freedom? Exactly. Like that's exactly what it is. It's this inherent and insatiable need to flex. Always. And the thing is like oftentimes when they engage in this flexing behavior, it's like, sir, is that really anything to flex about? Like, really? Like, come on the grand scale of things. Like, once you start getting into Henry Box Brown's, because like I just kind of like saw this and haphazardly threw this together. But once you really start delving into, like, he was extremely dusty. Like he had, like, I just don't understand. Like, at the time, they said at the time he had a bank account that had $166 in it, which is the equivalent of like $15,000 in today or something. You have to look at the inflation calculator. So he had more than enough money to secure his family's freedom, but chose not to. He decided to go to Europe and become a magician. That's what he called himself, a magician and a hypnotist. And then bring his white family over, and they went on tour until like he sort of died. And then I tried to look up his descendants. I couldn't really find too much on them. I would assume that they're all white by now. So it was just like, it was very disgusting. It's very, very disgusting. And then the whole, like, the fact that Frederick Douglass was upset with him and they sort of had this falling out. And then also, what I always find very odd is how during a lot of these stories, a lot of these like grand escapes from slavery, like as I've started to research them more and more, like oftentimes white people were involved, like white people were helping. And I'm not saying that to like that negates all of the things that they did during slavery, but it's just weird how Black men like to make it seem as though they weren't also seeking out these men during times of enslavement. They were seeking out these men to help them because apparently the white man who helped him was, quote unquote, his friend, but he was also a slaver. So how do you reconcile being friends with a slaver but calling yourself an abolitionist? I don't know, y'all. It's just a lot to take in. But the history is very, very dusty once you get into it. It is very, very dusty. Oh, and also I want to tell you guys, because I know I promised Scarred I was going to do a Dusty Slam poetry, which I'll be dropping hopefully this weekend. Like, my computer's been acting kind of weird. So I'm going to clean my hard drive and then get that up for her. And then I want to do a series I was thinking about doing a series, like, because I want to have like, what do I want to call it? Not really consistency, but I want to have like some sort of schedule or form to my content. So I'm thinking about, I'm going to do the documentary, and then I want to start doing like several different series. Um, because I was thinking about maybe addressing, like, we could do a series that I've called the pandering preference. Because I like, it seems like a year ago, white women were sitting online, especially on TikTok, in videos with black men talking, where black men were talking about how much better white women were. And now, like a year and a half later, they're pandering to black women and talking about how they've got the same black man. So I thought I might do that as well. And then I've got this really funny one that I want to do that's called The Plight of the Karen. That's hilarious. Like, these Karen videos are next level, y'all. I don't know. Is Queen was supposed to come up, but I don't know what that's about. Maybe she's still doing something. Cheyenne, are you busy? I dropped the link.
Hey sis, I'm here.
Oh, what do you think, Queen? I mean, like, I had this stream had no real direction. Like, I had mentioned it last time that I wanted to go over these 5 daring escapes
Hmm.
because, like, there's some dustiness in there.
Yeah, there's definitely like different levels of dust. The
Mm-hmm.
one that you were talking about with Douglas, the other guy, what's his name? Brown?
Henry Box Brown.
Yeah, that was interesting to say the least because I agree with what you were saying about going back for the family. And
Mm-hmm.
then I was sitting here thinking about the complications. Apologies. At one point I had my sound on and y'all might have heard me chewing away on cashew nuts listening and
You know,
sometimes going, oh my gosh. So apologies.
I didn't hear you. I was over here chewing up some mashed potatoes that I
Uh,
made.
do you hear what I'm saying? But I was just like, wow. And then I was thinking about how you were saying about the guy gave an off. Like there was the one situation where he said that he was going to sell them to him and he wouldn't. He went back on it. And it was that in the same story?
Yeah,
And
that's
then later on,
Henry,
after, go
yeah.
ahead.
Henry
Sorry.
Box Brown, like, pretty much the man who owned his family
Mm-hmm.
would lease him out because he was like a really good carpenter. Like, he had master carpentry skills. And so by the time he had been lent out, he was able to save up about $166. And his slaver knew that. And so he offered to, like, to pay. He was like, "Oh, you can have your family," but he said no. He said no.
And then to think after he escaped and then the offer was on the table. Now, in one way, I was thinking about the fact that um, there's a couple of different elements that popped into my head with that situation. Now, if it's a case of you feel unsafe of the fact that potentially they're trying to entrap you back into slavery
Mm-hmm.
by offering your children and your wife up, and potentially the deal could go wrong. I was
Mm-hmm.
thinking about the different possibilities of other ways, that he could have potentially got his family back, like
I
utilizing
think
other families or abolitionists to buy the family back, and then later on,
um
even
there's a if you like well, hold on, let me see. What's where is it? Because it actually, no, that's not it. But anyway,
because it's just like
the thing
even
with
though,
his slaver,
hmm
the what I was able to find was that his slaver was adamant about selling them because he had a lot of gambling debts, so he
okay,
needed the money.
he needed the money.
Like, he was ready and willing to sell them,
Mm-hmm.
so he could have gotten them, but he chose not to.
He chose not to. It's just sad and pathetic, and then at the same time, you're claiming to be this great abolitionist, But through that all, you never went back, never checked on them, never made sure they were cool, even though you moved on with your part of your life. You never went back to make sure your child was okay. Like,
This just go not to interrupt, but this just goes to speak to that black male worship has existed even prior to like sin acknowledging it, because the
mm,
history about him not buying his family was hidden. Like black people like Frederick Douglass and all of them, they hid that. The Northern Star,
oh,
they wouldn't report on it, while white newspapers were, because they were saying, how can he be an abolitionist but not didn't want to buy his own family?
it's just sad. And then it's just like, it makes me want to think what happened to the family, what happened to the wife, what happened to the child. And
Yeah,
then you never put up anything in trust for them to make sure they were good through everything that you were doing. You decided to take your talents as a wordsmith and hypnotize people and become a magician and travel and stuff. And then I'm thinking about at the same time, through that period where he's saying that he's working with abolitionists and the Underground Railroad and all that kind of stuff, you've got Harriet on the other side who went back for her husband and found him married to somebody else. Do you get what I mean? I've heard talk in the last how many months, people like having a go, like sometimes I'm in the
I
clouds
mean,
listening to
if
these
you
emotional dust mites.
the woman in the story, I read the book when I was like 13, Life of a Slave Girl.
Mm.
She hid in her mother's attic for 7 years until she could get her daughter.
Girl,
7 years in an attic, in a crawl space.
that really, I felt that. It's
Yeah.
serious. Like, I've been through some things in my time, and I went through a relationship in the past where that person basically tried to emotionally blackmail me into marriage and tried to weaponize my daughter. And I had to fight with everything in my being, and mentally, physically, emotionally, financially gave everything that I had to that situation. And I'm glad to say I got my daughter back. Do you hear what I'm saying? At the same time, I couldn't imagine that woman having to sit in the crawl space for that period of time, and the yearning and the longing to be with your children and just having to watch them from a distance and withering away in this box because of this god awful degenerate who's just obsessed. Uh,
Like we should actually read that book, because like
mm,
there's some parts in it that I probably shouldn't have read at 13, but it's very gruesome.
Hi, ladies.
Hey, Cheyenne.
hey, Shane.
Hi, ladies. And I wanted to say, to Queen's point, I was about to say, isn't that what Harriet Tubman's husband did? He
Mm-hmm.
just took off with another woman after all of that work, everything she put in. It just shows that black women are more dedicated. They have the dedicated, they have the, if you will, the balls. They actually do. And that's really sad because they're women. Why should they have to do all that? Just the burden and yeah, the worshiping has been going on forever. It's sad.
It has. It really has. And it's pathetic at this point.
How much more non loyalty can a black man show to a black woman? Like these girls really need to listen to the history and the women too, not just black girls, but the black women as well. Do you see just how unloyal we've been fed this fairy tale? Like if I honestly didn't open my eyes to like all of the history, I always had questions. It always never made sense to me that how is it that we were conquered like this? Why is it that the men are built like this? Like they can beat up the two guys at what, like why is it that they look like that but they're so scared? Why is it that they want to talk so big but they're so dumb? It never made sense to me. But ever since I found, Sin and other content creators, and I also, like, when Sin broke down the history, I was like, I didn't know all that. We were so busy praising these men, and it was mostly men we were praising. that haven't honestly didn't do a damn thing.
Yeah, it's it's quite telling. Like black women's dedication to freedom and liberation runs so deep that like there were black women who served in the Civil War who dressed up as men.
Really?
But
I
they
didn't
did
even
it
know
really
that.
badly.
Wow.
We should actually go over that because what was her name? Her name I think it was Mildred or Margaret. It's something with the M. Like once the I guess the she fought. I forget what side she fought for. I guess she fought for the Union. Um, but at the end of the war, she received an accommodation, but they stripped of her accommodation once they found out that she was a black woman.
Of course.
Yeah,
But I didn't even know that there were women. I knew that. Oh, there's just so much history,
yeah.
so much stuff that we're learning every day.
Black women served during the Civil War.
Mm.
Like black women went to great lengths. Like they joined the military and disguised themselves as men.
Hmm. To free themselves. That's why I said dedication. But dedication to a black woman, just looking through history, can be a gift and a curse. It's a gift that you have that much love and dedication to someone, but when they are not reciprocating, that's when it becomes a curse. And it's like black women don't know when to turn it off and when to say to themselves, you know what? I'm not being taken care of here. No one's thinking about me. I have all this on my shoulders, and start putting the focus on themselves, not the blame, but focus on themselves. And they don't know how to do that, and it's sad. It's a trauma thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it very much is. Because the other day, Goat did a premiere in it because one of the emotional dust mites in the red pill space that was, a part of Plantation Pearly and escaped the plantation and then wanted to rat on Master.
He did
Um,
it with the Henry box.
Oh my God, did you say plantation?
Pearlina Masculina's Bigfoot's camp, innit? He escaped the plantation and then wanted to rat on everybody while, you know, putting out his. I don't even think he realizes how degenerate that situation makes him also look. But yeah, he spoke on the gang situation in regards to America, innit? And Goat, there's certain things that irk him about people speaking on things that they don't fully understand. And
Hmm.
he reviewed his video, and it didn't have the intellectual context that Goat was looking for. So he did a premiere the other day to do with like the history to do with like Chicago gangs, which was really really interesting and insightful. Um, but like some of the parts in there was just heartbreaking, heart wrenching. When one of the guys was talking about the way that they view their sons as trophies, and I was just like, wow. Like,
What do you mean as trophies?
there's this whole section where this guy that's worked and who understands like gang dynamics and stuff like that. So basically, it's that whole sort of element of gang culture where they. Oh,
I'm
I
gonna
don't know
mute
what's
you,
saying.
Cheyenne, because you got some background noise. Okay.
There's an element of gang culture where they basically, adopt the little boys like they're their own sons. But
Mm-hmm.
it's like they purposely target um, children that have absentee fathers
Oh, I think
and
I
take them
saw.
on as their like quote unquote sons, but they basically call them trophies.
It was a. I think I saw that documentary. It was from a while ago, right? It was an older black. It was like a black man.
Yeah, but Goat did a good job the other day of like putting like all sorts of different documentaries through a period of time
Oh,
to do
he did like
with.
a mashup.
Yeah, and just adding in, how he does with the newspaper articles and
Mm-hmm.
different things to kind of back up what he was speaking about in regards to the kids, and it was showing different elements of Cabrini Green, and it was really, really interesting. And I'm not American, so it's really interesting learning those different elements of things that I wouldn't understand. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And just adding more depth to the sort of like conversation around those things. But it was just like the continued element of whether it's women or children being a continued resource at their leisure, at their benefit, at their privilege. Whether it's that lady that was in the box for 7 years to escape that dude, and just the entire, the absolutely, white niggas can get it as well. Any niggas can get it at this point with the bullshit, because it's just like that woman was married, had a family, and everything else, and you are so entitled that you couldn't leave her alone and just get on with your life and go find somebody else. You had to just keep going at this woman and stripping her raw and bare, and all the stuff with
Mhm.
her children. It's just disgusting to me. Um, I put a thing in the back for you, sis. It's an article that you might find interesting because you was talking about maladaptive behavior.
Mhm.
Now, obviously, this is not specific. The one that I put in the back is not specific to black men. It's to do with Italian men.
Mhm.
A sample size, but I think it's really interesting anyway because it's showing up, different things in different cultures of men that I think that women need to be aware of still. Do you get what I'm saying? Because
Mhm.
just as far as I'm concerned, with everything that's going on, obviously, we're right to highlight what's going on with BM. Well, I'm not going to pretend that Dusty isn't a mentality and that it also transcends culture. Do you get what I'm saying?
It does. It most
And there's
certainly
different
does.
forms of dust that have cultural implications for us, but then there's dust that moves differently in other cultures that women need to be aware of. Do you get what I mean? Because I'm not going to pretend like other cultures of women are not having problems with their men as well. Do you get what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Mm.
I was gonna say something I forgot.
It's okay. Take your time.
Black women need to start writing their own history books. That's all I have to say.
I
Honest,
Oh,
do.
there's
most
too much
definitely.
information we don't know. I didn't even know there were black women fighting in the Civil War disguised as men. Like, how
Me
many
either.
secrets have they been keeping?
This is why I think it's a really important generation, this period in time, with everything that we have at our disposal to be able to access technology, to be able to search things like the archives. It just makes me think about the fact that obviously there's been a lot that's been hidden. There's a lot that when it comes to societies they focus on in terms of the subconscious implementation of historical evidence, but the different elements of the patriarchal structure that exist in the white dominant culture, when
Yeah.
it comes to the black diasporas, they have their own variation of basically black supremacy that mainly focuses on worshipping black men, and the idolization and the continued pedestalization. And I think it's a great thing that we're able, at this point in time, to be able to research those things and document those things so that we can leave more history behind for the generations that come up underneath us. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think the younger generation of us, as well as younger generation of girls, even like my daughter's really learning a lot from me, having my tablet on or my speakers on, and she's like, oh, I didn't know that, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I'm finding all the information that you ladies and all the great content creators out there are giving out as being really really useful, really insightful. And I think with the way that things are now, we're at a point in time, like Cheyenne says, to be able to write our own history and literally document it in every way, shape, and form we can. Because we're at a point where, how many years ago, for some of our ancestors, being an author was an issue. Having to go through um, different publishing houses because you were a black woman. Do you get what I mean? And
Yeah.
waiting and pushing against those kind of grains. And now we're at a point where you can literally publish yourself. Do you get what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
just in terms of now having technology, now having things like social media and YouTube and blog spheres, we've got the opportunity in this generation for us to tell our own story the way we want it, and really showcase who we are and what it is that we're trying to do, because we see how they're listen, look at everything that's happened in the last how long, trying to rewrite everything with the Moynihan report and everything else since. They've got they've got a very good history of changing um, history to suit their narrative.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, like, to further expound on, like, Black women specifically writing and telling their own stories, because we have Black men across all forms of social media giving like this bastardization of the black female image. Yesterday, was it? I usually on my Spotify, I like to listen to affirmations for Black women. Like that's how I start my day, like with positive affirmations. And as I was looking for a podcast to listen to, one randomly popped up. Hold on, let me look on my phone because I took a picture of the name of this podcast, and it's like it's a it's a very light skinned curvaceous Black woman on there, and it literally is like Black women aren't good mothers, just twerkers and sluts. That's the name of the podcast.
What?
Yeah, that's the name of the podcast on Spotify.
Oh my god.
She's just referring to herself.
No, this is a Black man.
A Black man?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, then he's just referring to himself. He's a slut. He likes to twerk. They got that booty
Projecting.
up 24/7, 365. Doesn't matter, him or her.
Like, it's weird because I don't understand how these men don't understand that they're destroying the image of their mothers. Like, I just don't, or maybe they just don't care. Like, maybe
They
they're,
don't care because they hate them too.
I think their need for white validation supersedes whatever affection or protection they would have for their mothers or their female relatives. That's truly what I believe.
Because they are the supremacists of the community. That's who they are.
Yeah.
It makes sense now. It's just the more I think we go into history and the more we indulge ourselves in knowledge of what really was going on, the more layers we peel back. It's not, I guess it's not shocking. I can say for me, it's not shocking. It just becomes even more. It's like you're already devastated, and you just keep going through it. It's a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a rabbit hole that definitely needs to be continued to be explored,
Yeah.
because recently, with everything that's been going on in the space and stuff, time and time again, people are showing the different cycles online and the way that they want to continue these generational curses, getting caught in this loophole of staying in these dating conversations and stuff and being pulled
Mm-hmm.
into different elements. Like people are doing the same thing, but they're just repackaging it in different
Exactly.
ways. Do you get what I'm saying? And I'm enjoying at the moment other content creators that have started to sort of like talk about things that we're talking about in terms of self care, self love, decentering men, focusing on self, going through the healing journey.
Yeah.
So I really want to see Black women push forward with that. Do you get what I mean? And really do the work. And at the same time, when you're pulling back from those toxic environments, it helps refocus your mindset, as well as there's a lot of other things that are more important that we need to focus on that are going on at the moment. Just like that dude was doing a magician trick in the past, that's what they're basically doing, because they're rewriting history on one hand. You've got other women that are involved in it that are complicit with their behavior, and then on top of it, you've got the other section where they're not really doing anything in terms of building or investing, so you're contributing to the degeneracy, because it's almost like the building that's falling apart, that's foundation was cracked already, and all the other work that needed to be done to build that structure wasn't put in place, and now you've got a section of generation of, well, there's been how many generations, but especially in, like, for those of us who are like millennial generation,
Mm-hmm.
they certainly haven't put in the work, a good amount of work, and then what's supposed to happen is you pass it down to the next generation, and like most cultures do, but we don't see that with the way that st- community structures work, and I suppose that depends on where you are in the diaspora with that. Do you get what I mean? What you're
Yeah.
working off, what your foundation is, what your government has been able to put in place. At the same time, there's so much issues going on for us as a gender that these guys are continuing to ignore. And I feel like with everything that's going on right now, like, yeah, we're at the cliff's edge. Like, the things that I'm seeing in the news, like,
Yeah.
different things in terms of like Philadelphia's tearing itself apart at the seams
Mm-hmm.
and just all the other things. You know what I mean? Women need to be really, really careful about how they're handling themselves and how they're moving. Because the thing is, I get us removing ourselves from certain spaces, but we've also got to be mindful that just like that ignoramus that wouldn't stop and was like, on that woman's case for how many years that she had to be withered away in the box, that we put the things that we need in place to be able to protect us, or at least make the effort and attempt to try to do those things. Because while they're usurping our rights, it falls down to the next generation, the things that we don't put in or make an effort to do or attempt to do. Do you get what I'm saying?
Absolutely, Queen. Is anyone else tired of seeing Black women on these podcasts? Because it's like every time I look through content for a Black women or something, I'll literally get like a bunch of these videos of Black women going back and forth with the Black men. But if you're going to go
Hmm.
back and forth with them, you need to go hard. If you want to do that for sport, that's your business. But I'm just so tired of seeing Black women on there saying, well, Black women go through, and having these guys go off on them saying the dumbest stuff. I am so tired of seeing Black. If you're gonna go to podcasts, it's like Fresh and Fit, like please don't. I don't even want you saying that you're a Black woman. I am so tired at this point of seeing them. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, I agree with you
It
on
is.
that.
I think those black women, I think I think it's a combination of things on why they go on there. I think these women want to be seen as, not like those other black women, or they feel like they can change these men's minds, or they feel the need to go there and stand up for black women, right? And
Yeah.
I don't think that you're never going to change these men's minds. Like, these men hate black women, and there's nothing you can do unless you can change your skin tone. There's nothing that you can do to make
And
these.
they still won't treat you right. It's like they're
Exactly.
not paying attention.
Exactly. I would like someone to do a study on misogynoir, and like the growth of like misogynoir and the correlation between down low black men and transgenderism. Because I really believe there's a causal link. Because it's just it's just weird. Like, I've looked at the numbers, and like as more like the femicides are rising and more black men are becoming black women. Like, what's going on? You hate us,
Mm.
you're murdering us, you're unaliving us, but then you're becoming us at astounding numbers.
Cosplaying, absolutely.
I don't under like I don't I'm like, what's the mental confusion? Like, I really believe that there's something some I don't want to say there's something inherently wrong, but I believe that there's something inherently wrong with black male culture.
I think you should do a breakdown on that, Coco. That would be really good. I didn't even
And
necessarily think about. I thought about those two topics not necessarily like intertwining with each other. I knew that when it comes to transgender and when it comes to race, black men are by far doing whatever they can to dress up and be black women, and of course the femicide. But I never like actually thought about how that kind of connected. I think you should explore that and do
I was
a
thinking
video.
about it because I was like,
Yeah.
I've read a few papers on like transgenderism and misogyny, and how they're like sometimes they can be interlinked. And I just thought, like, I was like, no one's really looked at it with like misogynoir. So I think that'd be interesting. I have to read some more papers on it before I'd actually like really get into it. But yeah, we can definitely do that.
Becoming the women that they hate so much.
Well, they're always talking about how they're the better black woman and stuff. I do think there is a link and something to it, and definitely you should explore that, Coco,
Mm-hmm.
as well as on different levels depending on where you are. When I was doing, looking through different articles and things like that last year, there's different like financial incentives when you also think about it, because there's other guys that are transitioning and stuff and changing their identity because of what they see as quote unquote benefits, because some of them are getting their debts paid off and are able to access different services that they wouldn't probably be able to access as a man. Like
There
they're
was
getting their
yeah,
debts
because
cleared and stuff.
I know in California, like I think you can get the change like absolutely for free.
Mm.
You
And
probably can. I live in California and I'm not even sure, but giving that this state, oh, sweetie, it's just terrible, ladies. I mean, from
yeah,
Northern California to Southern, oh,
like
they allow anything.
Cece was saying at Medicare, because I stumbled upon a video, and there's a lady who does like, it's a white girl. She does like TikTok scams. Like that's her thing. And I randomly, it popped up in my recommendations, like this was a few months ago, and she was doing this TikTok scam on this black transgender woman that had basically started a GoFundMe and had stolen like all of this money. And they were saying like they needed help to they wanted to pay for their transition and like the medication, like their hormones and all of this. But then like someone was like, I guess they said they would come online saying that they needed money, but people would notice that I guess they were in designer clothing. And so the internet sleuths somehow got this individual's real name, found out where they were living. Apparently, they had used this money to buy a luxury condo, because apparently they were living in California and the change is like paid for, like their hormones and all of that stuff. And even like psychiatric care, like this person had found out all of this stuff and like exposed this individual. And then I think GoFundMe was trying to get the money back.
There's a lot going on in that realm as well, because Nyla was doing some good content the other day in regards to the split that's happening with different elements of the alphabet mafia, like the LBG want to split from the TQ plus 2IS, the rest
Oh,
of
I
the
heard
letters,
something about that. Yeah.
because they're
They
saying
want to
they
split
don't
from who?
align. Hmm.
They want who wants to split? Who wants to leave?
So there's been this whole situation escalating on Twitter between the alphabet mafia and it. So the L, the B, the G want to split from the rest of the letters because they're
Hmm.
saying that they don't align, and the way that they're strongholding all their side of what it is that they do. Like there's men that are openly like dressed as men coming on the. I don't know if you've seen all the stuff recently. There's some of your representatives that are changing to identifying as women, saying they're lesbian and taking over like the L realm of things, and the G in the rest of the beginning, the
Oh, wow.
LBG. So there's a lot of infighting and stuff, and obviously because maps have been trying to tie themselves to.
I saw that. Like, I
Mm,
can't remember. Was it in York? Was it in England that maps?
there's
Maybe
a lot of
Australia.
things going on. There's things going on similar to what you've got going on in America with there being splits with, um, but there's a whole history that I want to go into with y'all probably within the next month. I've got a list of things that I've put together. That's why sometimes you'll see I'll set a live because sometimes the ideas in my head at the time. So I'm like, if I set the live, then it pushes me to get on and do it. But there's a whole history to do with the background of maps, sort of starting in part of Europe and spreading out from there. That I want us to have a look at. But I need to finish
Yeah, because
The
I saw an article. I forget it was somewhere overseas, and they were like they were trying to get recognized,
yeah, yeah.
and I was like, what?
Basically, we had that issue with them back when I was in the realm, but we were pushing back against it at that point in time. So probably like 15 years ago, it came up about the whole maps thing and them wanting to be recognized. But like I said, we pushed back at that point in time, and certain things went quiet. But Europe has a different understanding of it. This is why I said to women that it's okay saying that you're going to travel. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for dating, I'm all for finding the best person that suits you, suits your needs and stuff like that. But we've got a lot of things going on with Europe at the moment, with the
Mm,
alphabet mafia, with the kids being able to transition without their parents' consent. There's different, I can't remember if it's Spain or Italy recently. That's why I'm going to do a stream around it, because there's a lot happening. And then part of the European sector have financed a whole maps project in the UK that's over 2 million. That I've just come into that
that's
information
disgusting.
in the last few days. So yeah, so they're pushing a whole heap of things in Europe, and you have to remember there's countries within Europe where you know that there's men of no color that are predatory. So women have to still be aware of where they are and who they're dealing with and all those kind of things, white, black, or in between.
Thank you for saying that, Queen. It's like we have our own representatives from other countries. I love Black women globally who get it, because the mammyism, all of it's everywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
this is a problem. Like, we really have to protect ourselves and look out for one another. But I know it's hard to look out for a Black woman who is not like-minded to you, and
Mm.
is literally, she doesn't even know what she's doing, honestly, how she is an enemy, and how she's not helping the plight of herself or other Black women. That's what's sad. That's what's hard. That's what I hate.
Which is understandable. Which is
Mm.
understandable. And then
Yeah.
people have to remember that with the different situations that we've got going on with migration, like y'all have got your situation in America with migration, with the borders and stuff.
Oh
But
yeah.
then
Oh,
we've
yeah.
we've got our own situations with um, borders and people coming through the top of Morocco from the continent and using boats and trying to swim across to Italy. And then I think like 2010 to 2012 onwards, even today, there was like a whole heap of them found on a capsized boat and stuff. But they've been, I can't remember if it was the UN or the WHO had basically segmented a whole heap of different migrants from Italy, because Italy at one point was having to deal with a lot with their what do you call it? With the ones that patrol the seas. I can't remember what their name is, because it's like,
Oh, the Coast Guard.
yeah, the Italian Coast Guard. They were going through it like 2017, 2012, and just even now through the pandemic. And then what they do is they spread out into different parts of Europe, but then there's a lot of them that want to come to England because of what they've seen on TV or whatever, so they'll make their way up towards France and then try and cross between the channel between Calais and Dover. So there was a situation, I think, this morning with the Coast Guard on that side with a whole heap of people. And
Mm-hmm.
then they'll, because we've got ports there with the ferries and transport, they'll try and jump on the back of trucks and stuff like that. But people are having to deal with a lot in terms of people breaking into their homes, breaking into cars,
Oh my
breaking into the
gosh.
back of trucks and stuff, lorry
But you know
I
what?
drivers.
to know because I know
Uh-huh.
I was in Germany. This was a few years ago, and I had an incident on a bus where like a
Mm,
German thought that I was a refugee,
mm,
and the minute I would turn around, was like, "What did you say?" Like, and then it completely changed. Like once they realized that I was an American,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was
I
just
heard that
I
on The
like
View.
when I was in like Germany and like Eastern Europe, like it was weird because like you would feel a little bit of racism, but then the minute they found that you were like an American, it was like, okay. It was just like, long as I wasn't like a refugee or something.
Yeah, I heard some people talking about that, but I know some years before the pandemic hit, they were talking about that on The View. You know, Joy Behar, she's Italian, but she was upset. She said that they were being very racist to the migrants.
Hold on. CC, I'm gonna put you in timeout.
What happened?
She said Black Mills had on her job trying to get into Saudi Arabia. I can't stand CC.
I just read it. Oh my gosh, she's not lying.
I know
They're
she
all over
don't.
the
She
place, but I'm just like, oh my God. But yeah, I did hear something about Italy. I didn't know it was that bad, Queen. I heard about it, but I did not know that they were
always,
going
it
through
was
it like
like,
that. I just know they said they were being very racist, Italians to
I
the
know
African.
I know one time, like, because there used to be like them catching a lot of like Africans, Syrians, and all of that off the coast of Italy too. But that was like you said, Queen, that was some years back.
So really and truly, when it came to like, obviously, we've had everything that's gone on with conflicts in Syria, Afghanistan. So like 2010 to sort of like 2012, it was like the Syrians, the Afghanistanians, and other things that were going on with what's his name? Oh God. Um, to
Sudan
do
Hussein.
Yes, thank you, sis. Saddam Hussein and what's the other dude's name? To do with 9/11.
Bin
Uh,
Laden.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, him as well. So people coming over from those conflicts were in Europe. So they basically kind of took the bottom element of, not all of them, but the criminal element tends to get involved when it comes to you know, the homelessness, the refugeeism, and
Mm-hmm.
need to survive and everything. But then after sort of like 2012, then it became more of people coming over from the continent. So there's been conflicts in Nigeria, there's been conflicts in Liberia, there's been other conflicts. So you've got people traveling from different elements of the continent, because I've met people like 2013, remember between 2012 to 2018, I was on and off out there in it because I was doing projects, and I was basically going to move out there because of university and study and just other opportunities that were there at the time. So the black communities that were out there, they were doing well for themselves, they were doing okay. There's people that are, have moved in previous years.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm saying? So they've integrated themselves more so into the community. But then obviously, with the influx of immigrants that have come in and migrants that have come in, it's changed the atmosphere in different cities and different towns because of how they're maneuvering. So that's why you got that reaction, Coco, because everything that's going on with the refugees, and then the government, you know, some of the governments will give them free travel, put them in certain types of housing. I've known a whole heap of different young men out there. I've come from like the Congo, um, different parts of Nigeria, different parts of Liberia, Libya. There's a few other places that were dealing with different elements of conflict, or they've got situations where family have said to them, escape and come over. We can't afford to send for you, but if you can take that passage and make your way through, then meet us at this point. Do you get what I'm saying? More over than not, it's been the conflicts. So they've had floods of them at different points. But when it's been overbearing for Italy, the UN's got involved and then made agreements with Europe and says like, okay, Switzerland, you take this much. England, you take this many. France, you take this many. Germany, you take this many. And at first, it wasn't such a bad thing because obviously population is down in it with everything that's going on. In Europe, people are having less children. So to the governments at first, it seemed beneficial, but it's the dusty mentality of staying in degeneracy,
Yeah.
staying in the drugs, staying in the crime, especially if they're giving you different offers in different cities of getting your education, free education in certain cities, or being able to access different elements that even the citizens there can't even access. Do you get what I mean? In the way that they're given certain things. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing here in the U.S., Queen. I mean, when you
Mm-hmm.
start researching a lot of the programs and
mm,
assistance, it's mostly geared towards young Black men,
exactly.
and they're not benefiting from these programs because they're not making use of these programs
Mm,
Not taking advantage of it. It's
at
actually coming
all.
back to your point, Coco, of the original watch and review of Africans escape from enslavement. They're trying to run and escape from their own homeland. But I thought they were just such good men. They're just so misunderstood. Oh, no one understood. But see, we go through so much only so they can go to someone else's place and dust it up. What the
I
hell,
mean,
man?
when you think about it, if you, because I like to, I don't know, like I'm one of these people that I look up a lot of like random facts all the time. And so recently I was looking up some stuff, and 10 of the most violent countries in the world are all in Africa. 10 of
Not
the 20,
shocked.
10 of the 20 most violent. And then another black, the second hot, like the country with the largest um, amount of femicides is Jamaica, behind El Salvador. And Jamaica is predominantly black. So you'd have to think most of those femicides are black women.
yep, and they're not even recording it properly.
No, and once I started looking at Jamaica, then because I was like, oh, let me go and then look at St. Kitts. And I'm looking at all of these islands, all of these, and then I'm going to look at the population to see how large is the black population. And the black population makes up predominantly the entire populations in these countries. And the
Hmm.
femicide rates are alarming. If you
It's a,
go and you read some of the newspapers, it's women are being slaughtered left and right.
they literally
It's
Black
so
just got their
disgusting.
and the
Jamaica just got their first proper official like DV shelter during the pandemic.
and the
No,
crazy thing is what I keep seeing, like whether I'm looking up black femicide in UK, black femicide in Canada, in Latin America, here, wherever, it seems to be that these are accomplished black women. Like these are young black girls going off to college. These are black girls who are black women, should I say, you days from graduating. Black women who have doctorate degrees and are taking care of their families. And it was this one black woman in Canada, and this story broke my heart because I was like, what's going to now happen to her elderly parents? Because like she was only child, she was killed by her boyfriend or something. And I guess the only way that they found that she was, I guess, missing or something, like her job hadn't alerted, is because her parents are both bedridden, and I guess the bed alarmed. And somehow, like the bed was alarmed, I guess, notified like the hospital, and the ambulance came out, and then her parents were like, "We haven't seen her in days." And then, like, I guess they later on found her like deceased in her car, and like
Mm.
she had just finished her PhD, like
That
literally
jealousy.
graduated.
They're jealous. This is what it's. That's why it's so crucial for Black girls and Black women. I don't care what age you are to wake up. It is an issue. This is literally life or being unalive immediately, and you can't waste any time. You have to be watchful. You have to, sadly, watch behind your back for two reasons. Not just being a woman, a Black woman. You gotta worry about the people that look like you because you have to also make sure that no Black woman who's trying to set you up because she's jealous of you. It's sad.
See, we need a World War III. That's what we need. But then the crazy thing is like it was funny because I was having this conversation. I was like, me and my friend were like, oh, they need to go to war and send them off to war. But then the thing is like felons don't get sent off to war. Like they don't send felons to war.
Mm-hmm.
So it would have to be like a desperate, like we'd have to probably be getting like slaughtered in war before they'd send these dusties off. So
Yeah, I mean,
I
It's
like us in
just
America.
terrible.
America, they don't even in war during the draft. They don't draft felons.
Yeah, which I understand why they don't want people. It's not necessarily because
Yeah, they
there's a
don't want
lot of
people over here to
people.
commit war crimes. I mean,
Yeah,
American soldiers already commit war crimes, but
they do, but it's like if you have someone who, I
yeah,
guess it just depends if you have like people who are predators, I can understand they don't want the lowest of the low going there. And then you do have some people who are smart who know exactly how to use weapons because they were so busy using them on their own people in their communities. So yeah, you should go to war. You should do something that's worth fighting for. But it's a mix with that. I would hope not. But I do know that these young black boys, they need to get off their behinds. I am so tired of seeing them standing out, pants sagging. It's just so disgusting and disturbing to me.
it is. And out here in New York, like they all look strung out. Like they all, and it's weird because like I'm used to seeing crackheads look a certain age. Like
Yeah.
I've never, I don't remember growing up seeing young crackheads.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm seeing
That's true.
young, like young crackheads, like 19, 22. Like crackheads usually be like 30, 35, like 40, 50 years old. Like no, they 19, 20 out here.
Yeah, and 15 and
Leaning.
16, and shaking, and you're like, your life just got started. What are you doing? But
What
that's what's happening.
I was taking the express bus home from work one day and I was gonna get off because I wanted to get ice there's this it's not ice cream, it's like gelato place that I was like, oh, I want to get off the bus. But when the bus stopped, it was a black guy. He was sitting there. He had a baby face. Like he couldn't have been no older than I put max 19. Like he was anywhere between ages 16 to 19. He had his shoes off. He looked completely dingy. And he was leaning like he had just done heroin. Like he was nodding.
Yeah. Ugh.
I was like, and mind you, it's like 5:30 in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're just sitting at the bus stop nodding.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a 21st century crack epidemic, but with this like K2 and the meow meow and the black mamba and the fentanyl and all the other weird ass concoctions that they're mixing up.
And
Well,
this
this fentanyl is going hard. It's turning these people into zombies. You know, we have a problem in California. I don't know if you ladies seen the news about this flesh-eating zombie-like drug they're doing in LA.
oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
Oh
funny
yeah.
because that's been around for a while, but it was like in Eastern Europe, and I guess it's just now becoming popular here. Crocodile,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
like crocodile's been in Eastern Europe for like I watched a documentary on it, like probably early like 2012. So it's been around for a long time. It's just I guess it's just now getting popular here, but it basically eats you alive.
Oh,
And you're taking it.
Like it literally causes like your skin to break down, like your flesh starts to degrade, like you have ulcers. It's crazy. It is wild. But this just like you were saying about the modern day crack epidemic, this just speaks to I don't know if you remember when Goat did a live stream on like drug abuse or cocaine use in the black community. Like
mhm.
um I can't remember if it was like the early 1900s or it was like I can't remember the exact year,
Mhm.
but
I have a vague recollection.
yeah, like this just speaks to it because he also he pivoted to how black men are now ODing at rates higher than even white people. And I just read
Mm.
an article that black men under the age of 18 are 4 times more likely, I think ages of 16 to 18 are like 4 times more likely to die of an OD than a white boys of the same age. Like when did like that's alarming because like when I was growing up, like there were just drugs that we as black kids were not touching,
Mm-hmm.
weren't touching. Like if you were, when I was in high school, like the most black kids was doing was you might get drunk and you might smoke a little weed and you might smoke a cigarette or two, but that was about it. And that was you was doing a lot.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
I think it's
Now, like they popping pills, drinking lean, like all types, like they're doing narcotics. We weren't doing narcotics at 17 and 18 and 19. And I didn't know, even when I was like 21, 22, I didn't know no black people that was doing hard drugs. Yeah, I knew some white people in college that was doing cocaine, but like I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
black people that was sniffing coke.
They used to say that that was a rich white man's drug. That was the name of the game. That was something that they did. And for a while, it was true. When you hear about that club, I forgot that club in New York that all the stars used to go to, and they were constantly getting drugged up. This was like the circuit of the 70s and 80s.
Studio 54.
There we go. Studio 54. I remember Janet Jackson was talking about that. She said, I remember I think she was like a young teenager. She said, I just thought that they looked so dumb. She said, I walked in there, I didn't know what they were. I was like, why are they sniffing flour? She thought it was flour up their noses. She said, wow, that's so dumb. That's what she thought. But that's what she's seen a lot of the people doing it. But it's like, yeah, that was in more like rich environments. And most of the people that were doing it were white. That didn't mean black celebrities weren't because they were like the Sammy Davisons, et cetera, et cetera. But
But like
yeah, mm-mm.
and even like I'd say the most like drugs I had ever saw black people do in college is like I did have a friend that would take what's it called? She would take Ritalin to study. Like but
Is that like Adderall?
like yeah, is it, no, that's Adderall. Maybe that's what it was. Like she would take Adderall to study. And I knew a lot of college students of all races who did that. So it wasn't like something I saw as like, oh, okay, like they're not doing it, like they're doing it to study, so whatever. But that was like the most. Now they doing all types of stuff.
You know, but you're not the first person that actually that I heard this from. I had heard this, I'll say maybe like a good 7 years ago when I heard they were writing this article and it was this Hispanic man who said that he had been in jail for like 15 years. He finally got out, and when he returned back to his home, I think it was some part of LA, I don't know which part, but he said the first thing he said is, I couldn't believe how strung out the youth was, and he couldn't believe that there were so many hardcore drugs that were touching black and Latinos. He couldn't believe it. He was like, this is stuff that you would see the meth. He said, I wasn't used to that when I before I went in. He said that was stuff that white people, you see them do meth, the coke, they were doing all that stuff, but you never seen like black people like popping pills like that, or even Hispanic. He said, I couldn't believe it. And that's coming from a Mexican. He couldn't believe how strung out they were. And that was about 7 years ago.
I
He
didn't
said
know
they were
black
doing some
people did
hard
meth
stuff.
until last year.
Mhm. They were, sweetie. They've been doing it hardcore. I'll say like the past 7 years. That's when I read that article, and he said I couldn't believe it. He said black people doing meth. No, that was something. If
Like
a white
it
kid had
was
a meth lab,
online. I was watching. It might have been Vice because I used to watch a lot of their drug documentaries, and it was like something like methed out something or whatever was the name of it. And then I'm watching it. I'm watching these people do meth, and then randomly they pan to this black dude, and I'm like, hold up, black people smoke meth?
mm-hmm.
I was like, when did black people start smoking meth? And I was
Because
like,
it was
no, I was
shocking
like,
and it's expensive.
and I was like, okay, I was like, maybe he's smoking meth because he out here in Utah. I was like, maybe that's why he out here. But then,
Being a follower, exactly like they usually do.
but then I looked it up, and like apparently, like the CDC, like we're not we're not up there with the usage of like white and Latinos, but black people they doing meth now.
It's shocking. That's like some zombie stuff. That was stuff that you heard from black kids if they were like in a white neighborhood and they were like, yeah, you know, my friend, man, he has a meth lab. I didn't know what that was. I was like, I don't mess with that. He came for the weed, but he wasn't staying for the meth. But now, oh, they don't care. And I think, to be honest, the reason why we have more black children, specifically black boys, doing a lot of meth and doing all of this stuff is because it's the closest thing to acceptance. They if they are bold enough to go around with a camera and a microphone asking white girls if they like them or black white boys, which one would you prefer to be your slave, me or this black guy? If they
What?
are bold
You saw
enough to
something
do,
like that?
you heard me, sweetie. It's all over YouTube. You had, I think it was like two black boys. They were going up to random white guys, to white men, and they said, "Listen,
White
we,
men?
yeah, like white boys, I should say. Well, they're like 19, you know what I mean, like around
That's
there."
weird. Yeah.
They were going up to him and say, "Listen, man, ain't no racial. You know how stupid they are with their tap dancing asses. You know how it is. It ain't racial, but I need you to answer this question. Be honest. Who would you rather keep as a slave, me or him?" And the white boys honestly were so taken back, and they were like, "Man, I don't want to answer this question. Like, why the hell would you ask me? So, are you serious?" Got the camera right in front of their face. "Come on, man, you got to make a choice." "Okay, well, I guess I'll go with him over here." "Why you gonna choose him over me?" Getting jealous. And then the boy's like, "Well, he looks stronger. I'm looking at his build, the way he's built. He looks like he can endure hard labor." It was like so forced and so embarrassing. Yes, they were doing that. If you ladies didn't know, yes, they were doing that for a while. They were doing. I seen those
Weird.
videos like
That's
3 years ago. Hmm.
like black men have no pride.
No, it's so embarrassing. But these aren't even like when I say men, these are like young men. These aren't older ones. This is so embarrassing, but it just shows you how the older ones have failed. Each generation of black men have failed the next man, and I'm tired of it. It's just so disgusting. I don't want nothing to do with it, but you can't change people. But the best thing black women can do is just step away. You're not stepping away from blackness, you're stepping away from degeneracy.
And like, yeah, because like they're getting younger and younger. I just saw on YouTube that some 15-year-old boy shot a middle schooler. Like
Me too. Me too. Yeah, I
that
seen that.
some little boy named Baby K is on the run.
Oh.
And I'm just like, it's we it's like the like I just don't understand not wanting to be able to live in an environment where you feel safe.
It's
Like,
Yeah.
exploding.
why would you want to live somewhere where there is always violence?
Yeah. Well, when it consumes you, it consumes you. And
Or
like I
like
said,
I
ugh,
don't even understand how you could get accustomed to that. Like,
mhm.
I don't it just doesn't seem, I don't know, y'all. I just don't.
It's not normal, Coco. It's not, none of this is normal. But if you have been around that and your self esteem is dragging on the ground, that's all you accept. That's all you know. That's what you accept. However, it's not all black people. There are black people who really are fighting and black kids who wish they can get out of the environments that they could, but they either have family members most of the time doing whatever you ain't gonna be this and you ain't never gonna be saying things like that to them. It is terrible. It's sad. I mean, a lot of people don't even know that, regardless of how you feel about them, but that's what the Michael Jackson's Bad video, that's where it was inspired from. But people don't like to tell the backstory of that. The whole reason of him doing it with Wesley Snipes, when you look at the longer version of why he's saying I'm bad, it's because of a situation that happened with a black boy in New York who came back to his hometown after attending college. And his friends basically looked at him and said, "Oh, you ain't the same. What, you think you better? You speaking different?" They were so jealous and doing whatever they could to drag him down until they offed him. They unalived him. And he was a young black boy. He was very smart. But that's why Michael made the video. That's
It's
what it's actually about.
I mean, like, it's weird not, and my thing is like, okay, I understand jealousy. Like, I've looked at people on Instagram and been like, oh, her life looks amazing, and you get a little, but then I move on. Like, I've never
Hmm.
been so moved by jealousy that I felt the need to be like, oh, I need to go out and harm another black woman. Like, that's
Yeah,
absurd.
this is sad.
For me,
That's
like,
a sad emotion to have. It's so
if
I
anything,
feel bad.
like if I see like specifically like the the black women that I follow on social media, like I've deemed these women successful in some way or another, and like I follow them for inspiration.
Hmm.
And so like I just don't understand how. But then again, I guess black men don't really have many examples. Many They really don't have many good role models to look up to when you think about it. Because even black men who have excelled all seem to somehow wallow in some form of degeneracy.
But then
They,
think about it when it comes to even like the Russell, Sierra's husband, the whole dumb
Hmm.
conversation that was going on around him versus Future. All of them were pedestalizing Future and
yeah,
saying how Russell was a sim for looking
Hmm.
after and taking care of his wife and his children. Like, this is what they're passing down to the next generation.
because you see it. You see, I notice like black younger and younger are they're reiterating the same things that older dusties are saying, and it's like, sir, like little boy, you're 16. You don't like
Hmm.
black women because you don't like black girls because they have an attitude. You've only been alive for 16 years and probably only been around girls for the last four. So what are you talking about?
Exactly. But this is the poison they're doing. This is just shows that black men have always gone out of their way historically to cause more harm than good. They
I mean,
have never went to bat for their people.
oh, and even the degradation of black women. I think we should also, Queen. I think this would be something that you would probably really like to research. Is what was it? I think it's called race music. Um, Pretty much, it was basically a genre of music where basically black men just sang songs about how they didn't like black women.
Oh, actually, you know what? I've been looking into that a little bit because I remember the Eagle, she did a live in it and she was
Mhm.
playing some music. So I ended up down the rabbit hole in it. And there were some
I
other
bet that.
content creators that were finding pieces where they're talking about nappy headed woman and all these kind of things and talking about women's features. But
Yeah.
more recently, sideline, I think it was in the last couple of months, I've done content around the radicalization of young men and basically trying to show the correlations between what was going on when it came to sort of like 9/11, ISIS, and everything that was going on with the Taliban and the way that they were able to use the internet to radicalize young men at that point in time, and the similarities between what's going on now, and obviously there's the everything that's going on with the F to the B to the I, and that word list that they've brought out. But I've been showing the ladies documentaries as well as different levels of extremism and how the schools and the school teachers are talking about the same thing about literally the level of misogyny that's now in schools and the way that the boys are treating the girls. They're hearing the terminology that's going on online in school, like from the phony and fraud podcast and all the other bullshit. So
Hmm.
it's
They're repeating it
serious.
because they have no role models. There's not enough strong men. I think it's a society thing. But we have to be honest about when it comes to rates and who does more of what. And when it comes to the black community, the degeneracy has always been supported. It's always been uplifted more than anyone else's community. But I must say, as a society, especially American society, there was a time where you were respected as an American, and we really were the superpowers globally, but we were also, I think, in a way, an example of how the American home should look like back in the day, in a way. But
Mm.
now it's all went to straight to HELL, and it's sad, and this is what is going on. These boys are repeating. It's a society now. You have a little bit of everyone in everyone's community reciting these stuff, repeating what they're saying. They don't even know what they're saying. Like you said, Coco, these are teenage boys. They don't know, but they're sitting up there. Well, no, yeah, I'm not supposed to respect women. And why don't you give me 2 cups of coffee? And yeah, these women need, oh, they can never love a man. You ladies did hear about the shooting that happened in Texas, right? Like 2 weeks ago.
Mm.
The mass shooting, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and that shooting, they found out who the guy who did it, and not only was he, of course, the white supremacy and Nazi, and he had it tattooed all over his body, he was an incel, a very heavily incel. And his last message, I think, was, "Women can never truly know how to love a man." And he went and he got out his car and he just started spraying people outside. And then he went inside, and people, of course, were running for their lives. And it's just, it is so disgusting. It's so sad. This isn't to have empathy or sympathy for these type of dudes, but it's just to show why women should really have a hold on their wombs and really be taking a look at what's going on. I don't need women in general, but especially not black women. Black women have honestly done enough harm, even though I know they don't understand how they don't fully understand because it's been a conditioning for so long. But I don't know how hard they know how harmful the way they move in society actually is when it comes to men and dating. They really don't. That self esteem is dragging on the floor, and anyone can stomp on it in their hearts, and it's really bad because they're producing what's poisoning their communities. It's just the truth. It's an issue.
I think when I've looked throughout history, I think that black men have been silently radicalizing other black men for centuries, generation after generation. Because when you, like I was mentioning earlier about the race music or like race songs or whatever, a lot of these songs are about black women. There was one, his name is, I think his name is Josh White. He made a lot of like race songs because there was a genre at the time because black people weren't allowed to be on the radio, and so black people were producing this sort of music, and they were allowing this sort of music to air on the radio. And so he had a song called Jet Black Woman, and pretty much it's about how he prefers his woman to be very dark, fat, and ugly because she could take a punch, and no woman can love him like a dark skinned woman, pretty much because she'll tolerate everything. And
Mm.
singing this back in the early what, I think it was late 1800s.
I didn't even know that was a thing. You ladies are just now telling me that there's actually like a catalog of men, black men back in the day saying these kind of things. The first thing I heard
We could
was
play one of the songs right now.
yeah, one of the songs I actually heard wasn't from Sin. I heard Sin's after. I heard it first from a content creator, I believe, or her name is Wake Up Black Women. I get a lot of her stuff.
I gotta find the folder, the file that I
Oh
saved a
yeah,
bunch of
Hmm.
her songs in.
I
And
know
I
who you're
heard
talking
something.
about.
I said, "What the hell?" Yeah, I said, "What the hell is this song?" And I was listening, and it was like, "I don't want no ugly nappy head, doom doom." And he's just singing. I said, "What the? Oh, are you
There's
serious?"
a lot
Now
of them
that
like
was a little
this.
bit shocking for me.
There was one. There's another one called Tar Baby.
Oh
Yeah,
my gosh. And that's, oh, no wonder that's where that comes from because I heard nothing but that colorist BS growing up from people saying that to other people. And I said, where the hell is that coming from? Oh, look, you dark as tar, tar. I said, where the hell is that coming from?
Hold on.
Oh, this community is so freaking destructive. Black men should just look at themselves in the mirror and throw the hell up. I'm so tired of them.
Here's the song right here. This man, Josh White.
yeah, I've heard this song.
But there's another one. There's one called Tar Baby, and that's about an ugly. It's about an ugly black woman. Can't tell when I black her eye.
Wow. Oh my
She
God.
will hang her head and cry.
It's disgusting, isn't it?
Oh,
Like, just listen to these lyrics. I'm gonna keep her for my regular use.
mm,
like a berry. Oh my God, sweeter is the
So
juice.
basically, he gonna beat you up, but he gonna keep you around because he like having sex with
I
you.
had a brown
Which
skin
is what they're
woman,
saying now, isn't it?
Exactly.
but that woman I could not
He said he
lie.
had a brown skinned woman.
Had a brown skin woman, woman I could not lie. 'Cause when it comes to my kind of women, I like 'em big, fat, juicy, and black.
This is just so disturbing, and to show how colorless and dumb he is at the same time. Brown skin is what dark skinned women have. I will never understand this colorism BS. Do you know what a crayon looks like? I could take a Crayola right now. Oh my God. And look at a brown color, and then look at the light brown, and look at the dark brown. It's variations of brown. Like, I just can't with black people. The fact that we have celebrated in general ignorance, no education, and have made it like it's the apple of someone's eye is just so disturbing, and it shows. It really shows through the music, through the history, and all I want is for it to continue to get exposed. But we really need to educate our girls because they need to stop birthing this. They really do, immediately.
I really want to go on, Queen. We should do like, were you going to go back to the voice of slavery? The voices of slavery? Were you going to do that again?
So what I want to do is I want to complete. I want to. This is basically I've got a list to complete before I move on to the next set of stuff that I want to do. So I want to complete the Voices of Slavery. I think I've got like two more streams to do around that, and then I decided with the Britain's Brown Babies, I'm just gonna read the book. Like I've got into the pattern of doing the book, and I enjoy that and the conversations that we're having. So I think in general, there's gonna be a lot of books that I'm just reading in the future. If people want to discuss it, they can discuss it. But I think it's just a good way of getting more information out there and
Mm-hmm.
more information onto the net. Do you get what I mean? For people to listen
Yeah.
to at their leisure. Do you get what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Um, so, and then I want to just finish off overall the content. I think I've got like two more probably streams to do around Britain's Brown Babies before I go on to the European babies because there's a whole rabbit hole there that I haven't bothered to touch because I just wanted just to go through it of the sim bits and bobs and different things that I've been saving and skimming, but I want us to just go through the research together. Do you get what I mean? Because there's thousands more children that were left all over Europe by black men and just soldiers in general during the war that needs to be highlighted. Do you get what I'm saying? And then I'll move on to the music I've been doing. Um, Let me just go through the back a second because I've forgotten where I am at with the content.
But yeah, because I
I've
would
been
like.
doing.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Sorry.
No, no, go ahead, sis.
Like, yeah, I would like to do. If I could find, because like there was a list of like the race songs. They weren't well reserved, like preserved or anything.
Preserve.
So I
Mhm.
don't know if I can actually find like a lot of like clips of the actual songs.
Mhm.
But I know that I can at least find some of the lyrics to some of the songs.
Okay. What I'll do is in the next, because it's like with what's kind of delayed me and slowed me down was, for those who are not aware, the Queen Cascade 2.0 got taken down. So I am my grandmother's rebellion now. But with setting up a new channel, there's more rules and stuff because people have been using and abusing the platform in different ways.
And you know what?
So,
Not to interrupt, but
go ahead.
I I didn't know. Remember, I was telling you like I was close to getting monetized. I'm nowhere near close to getting monetized now because on StreamYard I had to delete some of my videos, which deleted them off of YouTube. And apparently, when you delete videos off of YouTube, you delete the watch hours. I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Unfortunately, that's what they've changed the rules to now. Well, as far as I'm aware now, at one point you still used to gain the watch hours from just the fact that it passed through the system, but now, no, they don't do that anymore. So what you have to do is, in the back of StreamYard, there's two settings in it. There's delete the recording, and then there's a box well, it depends on your version of StreamYard,
Mm-hmm.
but there should be like two boxes.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll say about deleting the recording, and then there's a tick box to delete it from YouTube as well. If you tick the box to delete it from YouTube as well, it will delete it from StreamYard and YouTube. If you click to just delete it from YouTube, it should. But this is the thing. I'm on UK StreamYard, so it might be a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
You might want to just watch a couple tutorials because there's been updates and a few
Yeah,
changes
like
in it.
I was like hella confused trying to figure out StreamYard now. I'm like, what's all this?
Yeah, they've added some features, but to be honest, some of the features are really useful. And then on top of it, because of all the changes and stuff now, when it comes to the censorship with YouTube, there's a lot of videos that I'm having to put to 18 plus in it, or some of them I have to take down because of everybody's getting their copyrights, their copyright marks, their trademarks in it. A lot of content creators have grown to the point that they're in the position to sort of like trademark their content, which is causing even more problems. You know what I mean? So like, there's been a lot of streams recently where I take it down. I've realized that there's a way that you can copy the link from StreamYard
Mm-hmm.
so that people can still watch the stream in the back of StreamYard, but it's not on YouTube. Do you get what I mean? So when I did the
Oh,
Miss Jackson the other night, I deleted it from YouTube, but there's a way to share the link so that people can still watch it on through the community wall or through Discord, and you don't have to, as far as I'm aware, you don't have to sign up to StreamYard. You get what I mean? But once I fully sort out the Patreon, I'll be able to push everything onto there. But yeah,
mm.
with the music one, bear with me because there's some more research and everything that I've got to do around that. Like you said, finding the full music and stuff, and
Yeah,
obviously
like if I
my
can
location.
see if I can find.
Yeah,
I think
something we
like
can
some of
work
them are
together
like
both on.
some of the songs are like on sonographs or something. Yeah.
Vinyl, yeah, old vinyl. Like some of there was a one that I found, but it was so bad it didn't even make sense playing because it was just all scratch.
Yeah,
So you can
the
tell how
quality.
old that thing is.
Yeah, because when I was listening to some of the slavery narratives, some of them were really bad, really
Yeah,
bad quality. It
yeah.
was just like gurgling in the background. It's like, okay.
That's why I said I've probably got about two more streams to do around that because I think the last stream we did around that there was quite a few scratchy ones. So
Yeah.
um I've got a clear. Okay, at the moment I've got a series that I'm doing to do with like called Pimpology, which is to do with, you know, the mindsets of pimps, the mindsets of sex workers,
Mhm.
and really showing like different elements of how the pimpo dynamic works. If you
Mhm.
really listen to the interviews and stuff, so been watching stuff from like Soft White Underbelly and other things that I've been able, older documentaries that I've been able to find online.
Mhm.
Um, we've got the general stuff that I do with the topics. Um, mm, 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 mm. What else have I got going on? We've got to finish the Britain's Brown Babies, and we've finished the Sojourner's Passport last week, and we're on to Franz Fanning now. So yeah, um,
How did you like revisiting Sojourner's Passport?
do you know what? At this point in time in my life, it's been really refreshing. I think
Mhm.
because of where I am in terms of my evolution and my growth, there's different elements of it that really resonated with me.
Yeah. I get that. I felt that same way. Um how did you like when I read the book, I didn't feel like she was as far in her journey as she thought she was.
No,
Get that
this is the
feeling?
thing. Because I agree with you because of the way that she was speaking of different elements of anti-blackness and then the different situations that were going on with the justice situations as well as activism.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think she's still got some I don't want to say mummy, but worshipping tendencies there.
Yeah, I forgot what sort of prisoner I thought she was, but I didn't like because she describes. But I think she thought I would say she was a I forgot what type of prisoner it was, like a prisoner that had removed themselves but was still conflicted and drawn back to the issues. I
Yeah,
forget what she kind of dubbed that, but she saw herself as like a truly as a sojourner. But I didn't get that when I was reading the book. I really didn't.
I think she's on at that point in time. She was on her way. She was like in the journey.
Yeah, I think
You
it
know
was
what I
her
mean?
discovery. Yeah.
But then I will be sort of going back to it at some point because I was saying to the ladies, there was a couple of the articles that came up to do with other things, like the earlier version of the vlogsphere when YouTube was really young, like some
Yeah,
back
because
and
she said,
forth. Go
um,
ahead.
I don't know if you took the time like to look some of the websites up.
The majority of them, like there was some that were broken, there
Yeah.
was some that we were able to find, but there's a couple of them that I want to go back to because of there was different things going on between like her and Crystal Carrison at that point in time, and a few other people. So I want to go back
And that was
to.
shocking because I was like, wow.
Mm, that's why I was like, this is really interesting. But then we went on her blog site. The blog is still actually there, but it hasn't been updated in how many years. So I was interested to sort of like it made me think about like where where is she at in her journey now? Now
Like,
it's
yeah, because like
13 years
that
on.
that's not her real name.
No, I thought about that, it being a pen name. So I was wondering if she's, because obviously some people have gone from the vlog sphere to Instagram to YouTube to
Like
different
I
social
wonder,
medias.
like, and I
Uh,
wonder if she's come across like our talks, if she even like randomly Googles, because sometimes I would
I'm
think like
tempted
people.
to email her.
Oh wow, you should.
I'm tempted to email her and just like ask her about like I don't know, maybe doing some kind of interview if she's interested in just like not like a just like we chill and chat, but just I'm interested to understand since the book because it's been like 13 years since the book how she feels about that period in time in reflection, retrospect now,
Hmm.
and where she's at in terms of her journey, her career, um, just to kind of like
I think she's an
tie it up.
attorney.
Yeah, she did say in the book that she was an attorney, but
Mhm.
I know like some people change. Like, if they don't change the career field, then sometimes they elevate into other elements.
Mhm.
Go for judge or go into the legislator part of it. You know what I mean?
I
Sometimes people
wonder why
change
she
into
never
different
wrote another
elements.
book.
That's the other thing. Because there's another book that I said to the ladies that's on the old blog site that I said I'm gonna try and see if I can get hold of that one. But yeah, she hasn't done another one since. That's why I was like, I'm tempted to email her.
I wonder if she's. I bet she's probably living her best life.
Wouldn't surprise me. I hope
Mm.
so. I actually
Yeah.
really do hope so. 'Cause that's why she kind of left on the whole sort of like cliffhanger of, dating, exploring, and just being her best self.
Yeah.
You never know. With everything that's going on in these YouTube streets, there's enough content there for somebody to write something.
Yeah. There's a lot of wild stuff happening
Mm-mm.
on these black YouTube streets.
I really do think like we haven't got deeply into the Black Skin White Masks book, but I find it fascinating understanding the Martinique history and that kind of thing that was going on at that point in time, and
Hmm.
then thinking about where sort of like black women are at now in comparison to where they were then, and how he's describing black women of that generation or black girls of that generation, the sort of dynamics with the mulatto girls and the white men and You know, the way that he speaks about what black men and the struggle, and just seeing different elements of the. It's like basically, I feel like parts of what he's talking about then is what we're talking about now, but it's just like the 21st century version of it.
Mm-hmm. They've never changed.
Unfortunate. Well, fortunate or unfortunately. Fortunate for them, unfortunate for us.
Yeah. It's, I mean, they sold their daughters to white men. Mm.
And they're continuing in different ways. If it means them getting a resource or being homosexuals. And like I was looking at Cheese Cece's message on it about the gremlins, and it's ironic. The other night I was saying to Sister Wisdom and just the ladies in terms of stay away from the gremlins, stop feeding them after midnight. And there's that dude that's popped up the other day. So I've got some gremlin gifts in the back, and I was showing the one, the one with the female gremlin, and saying that's their counterpart there. Leave black women alone.
Mm-mm.
Oh.
Goodness.
So what you got planned for the weekend, sis?
Um, tomorrow I want to go to the farmers market
Mhm.
downtown
Mhm.
just to see what vegetables they got,
Mhm.
stuff like that. See if I can
Yes.
get some fresh vegetables, and then also last year they had this booth, and this lady made this blueberry crumble that was really good. I want to see if they have that again.
Ooh.
So that's about it. I need to go to the grocery store,
Yeah, I
get
feel
a
you on
few things,
that. Mhm.
and I cleaned my apartment yesterday, so I wouldn't have to this weekend.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna sleep in. That's about it. I'm gonna bum around this weekend.
Listen, there's nothing wrong with some TLC and taking care of yourself and focusing on what you need to do. You know, if that's what being a bum is, I'm good with that. Okay, I'll take that bum life.
And then I might go, like I was telling you guys, like I like to go to these like cheap massage parlors.
Mhm.
I go get a foot massage. I like to go get this 60-minute foot massages. Y'all, I'm addicted.
Girl.
I want to marry this man.
Listen, from the last time that we had a conversation about Massa, I still ain't found. I've been on and off searching for one, and I need to make an attempt to get back to it. But this weekend, I was supposed to be doing a self care weekend,
Mm-hmm.
and then everybody's kind of decided last minute that they're gonna celebrate their birthdays and stuff. So I was like, I wasn't planning on going out, but I am glad that I did go out today and stuff.
That's
It's my
nice.
niece's my brother's daughter. She's gonna be my niece. She's gonna be 1 today,
Oh,
officially. So she's got her little party this afternoon in how many hours? So I'm gonna enjoy that. But then I'm hoping to come home, give myself my face a good steam, good clean, give my foot a good rub down. I've got one of those foot peel things from TK Maxx,
mm,
and give my hair a good old massage, and just I need to give it like a proper steam treatment and all that kind of stuff. Some serious
yeah.
TLC. Overdue for the lots.
Yeah, like these foot massages, like I have really tight heel muscles.
Hmm.
Like by the end of the day, like I'm tiptoeing because my heels hurt so bad.
Do you have a high arch, Coco?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, so did my mom. She had a really high arch. She had small feet, but a very high arch, and she had to stay at the podiatrist.
Like, y'all, I had to go and get my insoles redone. Like by the end
Mm-hmm.
of the day, I'm tiptoeing, y'all. Like, I cannot walk on the ball. Like, my like, what is it like? My doctor says I have like plantar fasciitis or something. like the muscle gets so tight,
Mm-hmm.
it almost feels like my foot wants to like fold
Cramp.
in on itself.
Oh, wow.
Like it gets so tight and painful. Like I'll come home and I have to like put a tennis ball in my arch and like ground it like it's I'd be in tears, y'all.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I can imagine.
Oh, my poor feet. I was
Mhm.
like, I go get these massages because this man.
Absolutely.
I said I'm gonna spend this $60 because this man gets my heels together. And the thing is like the massage is painful. Like it's a painful massage, but
Yeah.
by the
It
time I'm done, y'all, it's like I got new feet. I mean,
is.
I'm shimmying down the street.
Did you say you was gonna marry him? I thought I heard y'all was laughing because I'm
Yes,
doing stuff. I'm
girl.
listening.
I am listen. Me and me and Young Chu gonna get married.
I'll be expecting an invite to come through via email saying,
Okay.
Queen, me and the Messiah getting married. Get your ass over here.
Exactly. We gonna have Haitian dumplings at the reception. Good.
It's so cute. Yeah, it's true. I mean, a good massage. Sometimes I was always skeptical when I would walk through the mall, especially in California, up and down the mall, because we have the most of the Asian population.
Yeah.
So yeah, when we go, girl, every time at the mall, massage, massage, and I'm like, well, yeah, and they'll be like older men, but I'm like, I see those veins in that arm, Mister Kim. I know you can get down. I know you can.
Listen, listen. I like the massage by a little old Asian lady.
Oh,
Don't let her jump up on that table because when she
oh
get on that
gosh.
table, it's over.
It's
Crack your back
over.
and everything.
Like Yao Ming is about to get them knots out,
Okay, whatever knot you thought you had.
Okay.
and they
Oh
be
my
strong.
God.
Like, why is this little Asian lady this strong?
They don't be playing. They get into it and I tell you, it look like we have a knot right there. Well, I didn't feel. Oh, okay. Did she go to work? All right, never mind.
Oh gosh.
Girl, but I was just like, and all they hands, like they have the softest skin.
Hmm. Soft skin, but a lot of veins.
Hmm.
It's
Rich
crazy.
man who did my foot, girl, he was just sitting there just working it with one hand. I was like, this man's strong. I was like, how he do this all day?
Hmm. I
Mm-mm.
remember one time, my mom, she didn't want her nails done. She was just passing by a place that she usually goes to that's next to the nail place that she used to go because she stopped getting her nails done for a while.
Mhm.
And one time she was walking past, and I guess the man that knows her seen her, and she was like, "Oh, hi, how you doing, honey?" And he said, "Oh, come in here. I'll give you that, and I'll give you a deal." And she said, "Well, you know what? I'm off to my." And she said he grabbed her and said, "Come on, come on." And she said, "Now this is an older man, but why does he have such a hard grip?" She said, "No, I mean like a 20-something-year-old." I said, "Well,
They be strong.
they
Them little
do."
Asians be strong. You
Okay.
listen. I
Those
don't know
shiatsu
where that
massages be
whole.
something else, okay?
I'm like, I don't know where that whole them not being masculine because they be strong. Some strong people.
I always thought that that was such a contradicting stereotype. How are you, oh, Asians know martial arts, which is like one of the craziest forms of combat you can do, but still be feminine? It didn't make sense to me. I'm like, which one is it?
I don't know the patriarchy.
That's crazy. Exactly. And I mean, we know their patriarchy is really strong because they make up more than the women.
Mm-hmm.
There's more of them than the women. Their
That's
patriarchy is hardcore.
okay. But yeah, when it comes to that element of, you know, I suppose femininity versus masculinity attributes, especially when the massage, they really know how to sort of like blend the yin and the yang really, really well. Like when you think about the
Mm,
way that martial arts is, you've got the extreme side of it in terms
Hmm.
of combat, but then you've got the other side of it, like Tai Chi and everything else.
and
Yeah.
spiritual. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah, in Chinatown,
balance.
the Asian grannies be out there in the summertime doing Tai Chi.
Hmm.
Is that true? Do they do that in New York? Have you hold on? Have you seen that movie Boogie?
No.
Oh my God, girl, go watch it.
Yeah,
What
because
have you seen the previews? Do you know what it's about?
no, what is it about?
Oh my God. Okay, so it was released I think like 2 years ago, I believe it was released. But it's with that the New York rapper that I guess he was robbed and killed in California. Pop Smoke, the rapper.
Uh-huh.
He's in it. He's playing a rival basketball. Like he's really good at basketball, one of the best. And the Asian boy that plays in there, he's in a high school and he's like trying to be in the NBA. And his Chinese parents are like pushing him. Anyways, he falls in love with the black girl. You got to see it. It's pretty good in
Uh,
the theater. It's
uh,
called Boogie, but it actually is good.
but yeah, the Asian grannies, they be in Chinatown near like at the park on Grand and Christie. And this
Yeah, that's why I brought it up because that's what they were doing in the movie. They were like doing their Tai Chi in like Brooklyn, like in that area. I said, oh,
yeah, this is in the city. They do it downtown. And they be a
oh.
bunch of them out there, like it be about 50 old Asian ladies with their visors on.
Okay. I know, like near the coast, especially like Brighton, they usually have there's like a stretch of beach where there's like a park and stuff, and there's usually some old women and old elderly men down there doing tai
Yeah.
chi and stuff
Old
sometimes.
Asian people about their fitness.
Hmm.
They be on it.
Yeah, and they're used to getting out and walking, like not sitting down. They're used to walking around and stuff, which is good. It's a lot of circulation.
Yeah,
True.
I have to. I always tell my mom to make sure my grandma go out and walk.
Absolutely, because when those joints, I seen it with my grandma, and you know what I mean, and just kind of like staying around a few, it does work on the joints. It stiffens them, and to the point where you are bedridden and you can't do
I got
anything.
her. I got her this little thing that she could put her feet in while she watches her stories, just to pedal.
Mhm. Oh, okay. I think I know what you're talking about. I think I seen something like that.
Yeah, to keep her active because my grandma does a lot of puzzles. She keeps her mind's real active.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah,
Listen, ladies, I'm gonna have to drop off. It's like
yeah. I'm gonna get off
5:29
here too,
a.m.
y'all. I'm falling asleep.
Yeah.
So I'm turning into because I have my exercise in the morning.
I'm gonna
Hmm.
have a drill up in the next day or two, so be on the lookout.
Okay. Yay!
Okay. Oh, I forgot the holidays Monday.
Oh yeah, so
Oh yes,
Hmm
you guys got bank holiday.
Yeah, we do, huh?
Okay, cool. Enjoy. You got off
enjoy and
midnight.
everyone stay safe. And I'll see you next time.
You too, ladies. Bye. See you next time. Enjoy your weekend.
You as
You
well.
too. Good night,
All right.
ladies.
Bye bye.